Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you would please have a seat. Thank you. It is Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, and this is Lee County School Board briefing. And today we will be starting with quarterly reports from our school board advisory committees. So if each person, when he or she steps up to the microphone, would please introduce themselves, that would be helpful. And plan on up to about we have a very full agenda today, so plan on 5 to 7 minutes per report. And we do want to make sure we have a little bit of time if board members want to ask questions. So, do we have someone here from Construction Advisory?
He just walked in.
There he is. Okay.
Was last in, first up.
Oh, you know it by heart.
All right. How are we doing today?
Good. Great.
Good afternoon, members of the board, members of the public, and whoever I may be forgetting at the moment. We've had 2 meetings, and of course, Dr. Atkins, I didn't see him hiding over on the side. You're not usually on this side, are you?
Right.
We've actually had only 2 meetings since our last report. In our February meeting, our basic subject for the meeting was to review the interlocal agreements. I believe I talked a little bit about it last time. After going through it with the committee, realized there's a lot going into them. They have to be, any changes to the interlocals need to be agreed on not only by the district but through the municipality as well. Our strongest suggestion on how to resolve some of the issues that are coming out of this is to be a little more proactive in explaining your 5-year plan or your 2-year plan or your 3-year plan, however it may be. We understand that it is shared, it is distributed with the county, but without regular meetings bringing it to the forefront, we're afraid that it just sits in a pile, and then by the time it actually shows up on their desk, it's a little too late for them to wrap their heads around funding and how to go about implementing some of the requests that are being made. So we believe staff has already made a good improvement in that regard, having quarterly meetings to go over and say, hey, these are the things that are coming up. These are the intersections we'll be impacting, to help them see things a few years down the road and be able to budget it properly. Some of the consternation maybe arrived from not really having enough notice to work into their work plan, the impacts that some of these projects will have. Sorry, I'm still kind of catching my breath here.
Well, let Ryan catch his breath, and then I'll make a few comments as liaison. First of all, for those of you who have read the committee report, you can see that this committee. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. For those of you who have read the committee report, you can see that the committee has worked pretty hard on a couple of issues. They've fleshed things out with staff. They've had discussions. Ryan is basically what we sort of concluded with the conversation Ryan is talking about right now, the interlocal, is that really probably me as liaison to the Construction Advisory Committee really needs to meet with the county commissioners to elevate the conversation about our 5-year plan beyond staff, so that they are more knowledgeable and are not reacting to staff presentations that are coming before them for whatever. And then the other 2 were, I think you were going to make recommendations. First of all, I have to apologize to Mr. Richards because our last meeting, I was driving to Howie in the Hills.
Right.
And we had some difficulty with the telephone line, so I wasn't actually able to follow the whole meeting, but I think the committee is coming forward with some recommendations.
In that regard, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to bring these up because this would not have been in the the superintendent's briefing. This was our April meeting, and technically I'm talking about February and March.
Okay,
So I was a little unsure if I bring that up now or I bring it up next time.
bring it up next time then. That's fine.
Because, I mean, it wouldn't have been in the paperwork otherwise. There's no April meeting in here.
Yeah, that's true.
But thank you for bringing up that point. And as the second part of it is not just giving them adequate warning, but giving it at the right levels. Some of the headaches, when staff talks to staff, no one can really make a decision. And unless we get the heads talking together, the arms aren't going to play well. And that's exactly what you brought up. So thank you for pointing that out. There was also in February discussion about the continuing services contracts and their use in relation to building studies, whether it be a costality or a feasibility study. Does that contract exclude the participating vendors from chasing the actual project? Now, legal had chimed in and said they were against the move. I think on the planning aspect, they talked to a number of other counties that are doing it, and it seems to be the standard for the most of the state of Florida. And for large part, like our committee unanimously agreed that anyone participating in a building study should not be excluded from chasing the project proper, provided that all the information created within that study is shared to the entire anybody submitting on the project. So there's no proprietary information withheld. It's all out there, open to the public. There shouldn't be a valid reason to exclude the firms that created that material from chasing the actual project. So there's a little bit of follow-up on that, on what happened in our April meeting, and I think I'll be reporting on that at our next go-around with a formal recommendation from the committee. But this was just a discussion we had regarding that topic, that everyone seemed to agree that, yes, if you do a building study, you shouldn't be excluded from the primary contract, should it be advertised. Man. These don't make it any easier, you know.
Mr. Richards, do you not have a car? You ran here.
Oh, I did, I'm sorry.
We appreciate you.
And at our March meeting, moving on, we had a quick discussion about the virtual meetings, and all of our committee members recommended, I mean, we've kind of moved to in-person meetings for quite some time and have ditched the virtual meeting aspect, but also the videotaping of meetings. We had no objections to that, and everyone on our committee said they'd like to continue videotaping the meetings to be posted, more for clarity about anything, the record keeping. We believe it really helps district staff saying on who is making comments and who is recommending approvals of items. We really thought it added some clarity, and our paperwork has actually been a lot better since that's been implemented. So and staff has done a great job trying to record what we're talking about, but once you take the faces away and go to straight audio, it's a little more difficult task. So we're recommending to leave it as is. I know other committees have other recommendations, but you know, this was kind of how we felt about that. Ms. Morgan did give us a good presentation on the diversity studies and what's going on with the recommendation the districts is putting forward shortly in the next few months. Some of the bullet points on those lists is more better tracking about small business enterprises, WMBE certifications, things like that we track and be able to report a little bit better about what the work distribution is actually going on. There was a letter or an email sent out to a few board members and at least the superintendent about the recent awarding of work, in particular being a little heavy-handed to a particular firm. We had that firm come in and point out that the paperwork presented there was not the most accurate. While it's not technically incorrect, it's a little bit cherry-picked. So we wanted to kind of set the record straight that, you know, it looked like a number of projects in sequence. There's a few other ones mixed in that were omitted, so it's a little bit of clarification there. They weren't particularly thrilled with the way it was presented, but gave one of our board members, committee members, and distributed that way, so needed to be addressed. At the end of the day, there really wasn't much of a suggestion and change as part of the RFQ process. Most people are really happy with it. It's relatively open. You can go in and get, I say relatively, completely open. You can go in and get a review and sit down and a debriefing after the fact, and procurement certainly made their recommendations that all submitting firms do that. I'm just talking too fast, I think. Getting a little winded here. But there will be a little bit more formal recommendations. We had a few members that felt that some of their concerns weren't really heard in the procurement process revisions. So at our next meeting, we'll also have a few recommendations from that as well, that say, hey, you know, we understand you don't have to agree with everything that comes out of the committee, but, you know, formalizing what we recommend should be on the record. So with that, I think I have hit the end.
Okay,
are there any
board
questions
members,
or
anybody have,
recommendations of us to pursue any subjects in the future?
board members, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Richards?
I would just like to say thank you for your presentation. It was great.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
anybody else?
Oh, thank you, that was very comprehensive, and now you can catch your breath.
Yeah, and we'll look forward to Mrs. Morgan bringing us your formal recommendations in the future. So thank you again from all of us.
Thank you.
CSI committee, anybody here from CSI? And please, everybody remember to introduce yourselves as you step up.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Atkins. I'm Michelle Stork, and I'm the chair of the Continuous Systemic Improvement Committee. Our committee's met twice since the last report. At our February 10th meeting, we heard a presentation about the district's proximity plan from Adam Malloy, Coordinator of Community Engagement. The committee asked several questions about the proximity plan and elected to discuss possible recommendations at the subsequent meeting on March 10th. Mrs. Gittens provided an overview of topics the board has recently addressed and encouraged members to view the board agenda in advance to contact her with any questions or comments that she would then bring to the board. Our most recent meeting was on March 10th, and the committee agreed that we support the district's proximity plan as long as it offers equitable access to high-quality education for all students. The committee also agreed to support continuing to videotape the committee meetings. We also discussed the virtual attendance option in a lot of detail, actually. Committee members felt that if we wanted to encourage volunteers from the community to participate in these advisory committee meetings, we should offer them additional ways to be able to participate. And potential volunteers might be discouraged from participating based on commute time, getting to and from the administrative center, especially during season. So a recommendation was made to draft a letter to the state asking for the ability to continue to offer virtual meeting attendance options for board advisory committee meetings. And Mrs. Gittens also provided another overview of the topics the board has recently discussed or addressed, and again encouraged members of the committee to reach out to her and contact her with questions or comments. Our next meeting is tomorrow at 6 p.m. here at the Administrative Center. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Stork? Yes, Ms. Gittens.
Good afternoon. Not a question, but just kudos. It's been a pleasure working with this group. They are very much into what is happening in education and in the community, and have some really helpful and insightful comments to make. And I would suggest that any of you that have not watched the meetings for CSI that you do so. And I'm very glad that they decided to vote to continue with the videoing for the reasons that you discussed.
Okay, anyone else have a question or comment? Thank you very much for informing us what your committee has been doing. Okay, next on the agenda is Curriculum Advisory Committee.
And then I messed the microphone up. There we go. Good afternoon. My name is Bethany Quisenberry. I'm the Director for Elementary Curriculum and Instruction. Our chair was unable to attend this afternoon, so I will give the report. In January, Ms. Fisher gave an update on the topic of social, emotional, and positive behavior support that is available to our students, and also shared how funding from the CARES Act was being used to increase services for our students. Adam Malloy also gave a presentation on the proximity plan options for the district, and members were given the opportunity to ask questions and to provide feedback. The Director of Curriculums gave an update on the textbook adoption process for English Language Arts and reviewed that committee's recommendation. The Curriculum Advisory Committee voted unanimously to approve that process. In February, Lori Houchin, Director of Middle School Curriculum, provided an overview of the best standards, and in her overview included the correlation and differences between our current standards and the new best standards. We also discussed whether it was the best option for our students in secondary, since they would be continuing next year with our current standards, if they should go forward with the textbook adoption or hold off. And the committee recommended that the district hold on the purchase of new curriculum for secondary for English Language Arts until FY23. However, they recommended that elementary move forward as K-2 implement those best standards in FY22. In March, unfortunately, we were unable to attend. We were unable to hold our meeting. It was our first face-to-face, and we did not have a quorum. So our next meeting is scheduled for April 26th, and hopefully we will be able to meet at that time.
Thank you, Dr. Quisenberry. Anybody have a comment or question? Ms. Fisher?
So yes, I'll just comment as liaison that it's been a pleasure to work with the curriculum people, and I was disappointed at last month's meeting when we were not able to meet due to lack of a physical quorum, because we were anticipating the presentation on the new best standards, which will be adopted in fiscal year 23. So I was just going to suggest that maybe we would join, if the committee agrees, that we would join CSI in drafting a letter to the state asking for the option of having the opportunity to meet digitally or virtually, because it seemed like we had great attendance prior to the face-to-face meeting. So it really is food for thought. And thank you all for all the hard work you do.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, and thank you again. Next, District Advisory Council, DAC.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Hertz, and I have the pleasure of once again speaking before you in my second year, I think, as the chairperson, and I'm not sure how many years I've been on the committee, but it's been quite a while. And I say that to preface what I'm going to talk to you about today. I've certainly provided you a written report. I'll touch on briefly the January meeting that we had on the issues of testing and equitable issues, as well as what's going on with the academic update overall, which was a good presentation. Once again, this was an example of a success story from your District Advisory Council, in that it led to the development of a seminar for English language learners, and particularly focusing on the bilingual aspects of issues with their parents and things at home and ways to facilitate that. So there's been a big sea change. I've talked to you about this before, so I won't belabor it, but it's going to lead into where I'm going. You're educators, a lot of you have a background in this, and I want you to think about the difference between teaching a class of 20 people, teaching a class of 5 people, or teaching a class of 100 people. The District Advisory Council has 100 members. When I first started coming to those meetings, what would happen is we'd sit in a room, this room, We would get a PowerPoint presentation we had never seen before. And then they would say, anybody have any questions? People would ask some questions, and then we would get told, okay, we're out of time. Thank you. And everybody would leave. I don't think that committee, when I first started, contributed one meaningful recommendation in 2 or 3 years to this board. You maybe got some feedback. Compare that to think about the last reports I've been giving you for the last 2 years. We're coming to you with demonstrable evidence of changes the district has made and things that it's implemented, policies, procedures, documentation on best classroom procedures, documentation on best ways to use Google Classroom to facilitate learning, the example I just gave you on the English language learners, and more that Dr. Spiro has presented to the board about concrete, actual things that have happened because we were able to create a synergy between your district advisory council, staff, and then leading to recommendations and advice to the board that have been very, very actionable. And not just actionable, but have actually been implemented and benefited. The reason I gave you the analogy about the 5 versus the 20 versus the 100, if I was on a different committee, I might have a very different opinion about the best way for us to meet. I'm an attorney by trade. I look at people's body language when I speak with them, when I work with them, when I'm in a hearing, if I'm taking a deposition, if I'm in a mediation, those things all matter. If I had my pure preference of how to meet with someone, a small group of people, I would absolutely want to meet in person. And I also want to comment or state that what I'm saying has very little to do with the pandemic. It's a function of having 100 people in a room talking about complex topics with a lot of information. What's the best way to get that information out and collect feedback on that information? And I have some statistics for you. Back in January of 2020, we had 53 people out of our approximately 100 members attend our meeting. We were able to have a quorum and have a meeting, but we only had 53 people there. In February of 2020, we had 54. Once the pandemic occurred and we started having virtual meetings, we consistently had 100 people in attendance. We had almost perfect attendance at every meeting. Not only did we have perfect attendance, but we started accomplishing more. The staff was able to hone in on people's questions. By using the Zoom tool, we had a variety of ways to communicate. If someone was more comfortable speaking up like I am doing now, they would be recognized and they could speak. If they were more comfortable typing their comments, they could do that. But it's not like doing a comment card and handing it in and not getting a response. They're putting comments in a chat box that, thanks to Dr. Spiro and Dr. Atkins and the staff, that both we had Dr. Spiro's grade level curriculum folks, and I'll get the names wrong, the executive directors of the various levels were always in attendance at every meeting. Plus, we made an agreement that whenever a presenting team comes, they bring 3 people, 1 for each grade level for our breakout sessions. So all of the communication was synergistic and real time. People asked questions, got feedback. If the presenter didn't understand the question, they could ask for follow-up. If they gave an answer and the person said, that's not what I meant to ask you, or that's not what I was trying to find out, or that's not what I was recommending, there was that back and forth that led to something much more meaningful than somebody writing a sentence on a comment card and handing it at the end. And so, not just talk to the legislator, but I want to implore you to think about, particularly for this committee, and I'll talk about my committee different than all the other committees because we have 100 people. Think about what are the ways for us to continue to meet virtually. Our committee, we were not able to meet in March. We did not have a quorum. We only had 41 people attend. Now, I had spoken with our board liaison, board member Patrica, who talked to the board attorney. What we did instead of canceling our meeting, we didn't have an official meeting, but we did have a presentation. The people that were there were present for a voluntary informal gathering of people that consisted of some of the members of the District Advisory Council as well as any members of the public that may have been in attendance. And we had a presentation on the Student Code of Conduct. We had very lively feedback and comments and discussion about the Code of Conduct. There were no formal recommendations made because we didn't have a formal meeting and we couldn't conduct any business. But I'll suggest to you that we accomplished a whole lot. And I'll question how much the board needs formal recommendations from your district advisory council. If we go through the list of accomplishments that I think the district advisory council can claim credit for in conjunction with staff, not one of them is a result of a formal recommendation. The last formal recommendation I remember us really giving that I thought had some import was about the location of the Bonita Springs High School. And quite frankly, in my opinion, there was only one choice. Between the two choices, it was a clear-cut decision between where to locate that school. Those of you that were around for that can think about those criteria, but that was a formal recommendation we were asked to make. Most of what we do is give feedback from this microcosm of the community where you have a collection of parents, teachers, administrators, staff members, and other community interested people that give you real feedback on these issues you're talking about. A great example of that is our discussion of the proximity plan. This is going to be hard for me to say, but I mean no disrespect to the other committees. And I heard somebody say today, we support the district's proximity plan. I don't understand how somebody could do that because my understanding from our presentation is there isn't one yet. There's a variety of options that aren't even yet fully fleshed out to enable you to determine the differences and the meaningful cost-benefit ratios and analysis between those different options. We were presented a variety of options. I thought we'd give very meaningful feedback on our comments and what information we thought we needed to be able to make a recommendation. But there was not, I didn't hear somebody say, I recommend option A, or option B, or option C. Or I recommend the proximity plan that's like this or like that. So I want to show you that don't get lost in getting a recommendation if it doesn't actually help you accomplish your goal. I don't understand how saying we approve the proximity plan helps you accomplish your goal. What we said is, we'd like to understand how long should transportation trips be? If there's 3 different options that affect the proximity, and how does grandfathering affect this? What are going to be the differences in A, the length of bus trips for children? B, what are the cost savings between the different plans? Is it worth it? C, what is the equity and diversity impacts of this? What are the advantages to people that can provide their own transportation versus need to have transportation provided by the school district? That's just one area where I thought we get some very meaningful questions that you folks need your staff to answer for you, and I believe incorporate into those different options to then help you make a policy determination. And that wasn't the only area we did that. I won't go through, this isn't a proximity plan presentation, but obviously we get a lot of feedback that your staff has, and it was captured in our minutes, and you can review that. And I think that's the kind of interaction that's truly so important. So I would say to you that if our board can't have meetings unless they're in person and make formal recommendations, I would encourage you to have us no longer be an official board advisory council. I would have you title us as some sort of community working group, keep all the members the same, keep all the attendance requirements the same, keep the selection criteria the same, but enable us to work with you in the most synergistic way to provide you useful, meaningful information. Let's not get caught up in labels and formalities that don't benefit you, this community, or the district. Our group, again, we didn't have a meeting, but the informal poll I took of the 41 people that were in attendance informally were overwhelmingly in favor of continuing with virtual meetings. Also, there was no objection to videotaping them. It's all about sharing the information and doing what we can do to help promote the district and make things better. And when we don't agree with things, we try to tell you that. Our meetings are not always, I'll love bubbles and rose petals. Sometimes we say hard things and we challenge people and question what's going on, like we did with the proximity plan. And I think that's what makes it all better. If you're just looking for rubber stamps, then I don't think I'm the right person to keep doing the chairperson job, and I don't think you're accomplishing a whole lot. And that's not what I get from staff. To my surprise, they seem to like what we do. They like the feedback they get from us because the goal is to be constructive and move the ball forward. With that said, we had an informational session on the code of conduct, and then our next presentation is actually just what I talked about. We're going to have transportation come present to us and talk about these various criteria from a policy standpoint of how are bus stops determined, what are the distances for children to walk, what are the various criteria with an eye towards next year so people understand what's going on with transportation, as well as how these various criteria will be changed or altered and how they feed into the proximity plan for the elementary schools, to try to provide you with the information you'll ultimately need to make a determination of what the best way is to move forward. With that, I stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, and you've given us a lot of food for thought, and as luck would have it, we are going to be addressing in policy, 1.20, some of the things that you just mentioned. So, board members, do you have questions, comments? Mrs. Patrica.
You're not a rubber stamper, Mr. Hertz?
No, ma'am.
Shocking to me. As part of my board member report, I'm going to talk about the last ACT meeting and the potential for you to send a letter in support of Senate Bill 934. So I will get to that later, but I do want to thank you for the leadership you've provided that has led to a far more productive district advisory council than the one where you and I met so many years ago, because it really is about leadership and corralling a group of 100 people in a direction that will lead to positive change and good feedback. So I just really want to thank you for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Hertz, because that was outstanding, and I agree with you 100%.
Thank you.
Ms. Jordan, did you?
I'm going to ditto Ms. Fisher. I agree as well.
Okay, yeah, and we all definitely thank you, and I think, I'm sorry, I didn't see you had a comment.
We're too far apart, I think. No, I just want to say thank you. Your ideas on the proximity plan is really, that's the information that we need, the feedback, and so in the thoughtfulness in that is so important. And so I really want to just thank you, because I agree wholeheartedly what you just said. So, and what y'all have talked about, I think. So thank you.
That meeting was recorded. I'll encourage all of you to watch it and the breakout sessions if you really want to dig into the detail of what your constituents wanted to know and what questions they had and what concerns they had. I bet that'll give you a really good view of that. And, there's a lot more questions than answers, but I think that'll show you maybe what we think you need to figure out as you look at the trade-offs, because it's not a simple thing. It's something we absolutely have to do. I don't think anybody was opposed to the idea of doing the proximity plan, but it's sort of what are the trade-offs and how do you make those decisions were the questions we were asking.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Gittens.
Yes, well, I'm going to say thank you, of course, again. You know that I have been on all sides of DAC and SAC for many years, and with Dr. Spiro and other board members in the past. And it has been a struggle to get exactly what you're saying to happen. And I hope that we as a governance team and a district of our staff realize the importance and the use of our advisory boards, and not, like you said, rubber stamping. We have to listen. And I'm always the one talking about getting input from our community. And this is the largest advisory group, and we do need to look at them. And as we had talked when I was on chairing the board, getting that filtered down to the SAC committees and helping people to understand that their voice does matter and it does make a difference. So thank you so much for championing that.
Just briefly to reply on the SACs, Ms. Gittens, it's my understanding that the board did change the policy for virtual attendance at SAC meetings, that now counts towards the school's attendance. And from what I understand, I don't have numbers to present to you, but it's my understanding that attendance at SACs improved significantly by offering the virtual option, and that it was a real benefit to the schools, that schools went from trying to beg one parent to show up to having 20, 30 parents, which in my mind is a sea change for getting involvement in the schools at the individual school levels. So I would also consider that as you weigh your options as to what it is you're trying to accomplish with these and what you can do to work within the framework of the statutes and executive orders we're governed by.
And I must say, I have sat in on several of the SAC meetings since they have been virtual, and it is a great idea, because even parents with other children or other responsibilities, it has, to my knowledge, the ones that I've been participating in, increased the participation. So I hope we consider that as well. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, and thanks again, Mr. Hertz. We
Thank you.
appreciate
My pleasure.
We appreciate all that you brought forward. I think very important information. Okay, so Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee, EDAC.
Good afternoon, everyone. Not Dr. Spiro, Dr. Atkins, board. I am from EDAC, the Equity and Diversity Advisory Council. I'm Dennis Quisenberry III. I'm the chairperson. We've had a few meetings since our last time together. In February, Dr. Atkins came and discussed the Big Five goals and strategic plans, improving academic outcomes and achievement for our students, improving pre-K kindergarten readiness, and expanding opportunities throughout the district, expanding learning opportunities for students, post-secondary graduation, career path and options, and proximity student assignment by engaging the community to talk about the plan. Every student should have the opportunity to attend a great school. During February also, we had Mr. Brian Mangan come in and discuss the structural changes for the Student Code of Conduct, safety for staff and students, how we're responding to our students' academic and disciplinary needs, stakeholder feedback and next steps for the Code of Conduct, and one of our future topics is law enforcement presence in the schools. For March, we had Mr. Adam Malloy come in and discuss the proximity plan. With that, we've discussed strategic initiatives, the elementary proximity project, community feedback in regards to proposed zones. One of our main goals is to avoid student isolation, evenly distributing the student population to guarantee success, increase public awareness of the district brand, community partnerships and school opportunities, equitable community and inclusion opportunities, and awareness of the proximity plan shared on social media platforms. We are looking to increase the public knowledge about the plan to get increased feedback on how the public is perceiving the plan as it is going forward. We did have a meeting last night with Ms. Brooks. She came in and presented the district's school counseling and mental health initiative, giving us a broad idea of what the schools are doing for our students in K through 12 mental health. And our next meeting is scheduled for May 10th.
Okay, board members, questions or comments for Mr. Quisenberry? Anybody?
Thank you. Appreciate everything that you all do.
Thank you. All right, I'll take the speechlessness as a win.
Yes, and thank you for me. I'm board liaison, and I love the EDAC committee. There is never a shortage of comments. So that's a person like me that likes to talk and listen and have conversations. That's a real plus. So we have one more board advisory committee to present, Finance Advisory Committee.
While Mr. Williams is coming up, I just want to say, Mr. Tublem, our chair, is out sick today, and so Mr. Williams has agreed to step up. He is our vice chair, and I thank him very much for coming on our short notice. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sean Williams. I'm a CPA and very honored to be here, that my schedule allowed me to be here. Thank you, Madam Chair, Board, and Dr. Atkins for having me. Couple issues that we have discussed in December. We had Ford and Associates come forward and give us a presentation, answer our questions around our bonding issues and the difference between the private activity bonds and the COPS that we're funded by now. And it answered a lot of questions about what our committee had brought up in the past. In January 2021, we had Mr. Malloy come forward with the proposed proximity plans, and he shared some of the issues, the current zoning, student isolation, transportation inefficiencies, and the likes, and we're willing to work with him moving forward on perfecting that proximity plan to save the district monies, as well as give our students the best education that they can receive. In February, Ms. Jordan shared an update on the creation of the District Audit Advisory Committee. During that time, we had one of our members, Tamika Seaton, ask if the Finance Advisory Committee could review a draft of the committee description to provide some input, because we do have some financial professionals and some folks that work, I'm a CPA, of course, and other professionals, internal auditors that are familiar with terms and sort of what the audit committee should function as. So we have received some drafts, and we continue working with our board liaison to get a very good, formidable audit committee established and working for the district. And then at that meeting also, we made the recommendation for the board to reconsider the videotaping of our advisory committee meetings in light of the misuse of public information that was previously disseminated on Facebook. And we felt that the videotaping might quell our discussions a bit. We would hold back on some of our true feelings, knowing that we were being recorded, and that could be somehow manipulated or turned around to look like not what we actually had said. So we would like you to reconsider the videotaping at least, and keep the audio tapes for the minutes. We do want to have accurate minutes of what we discussed and the recommendations that we put forward, if we have those, but we feel that some of the conversation and discussions might be limited based on the videotaping and the public broadcasting and the potential for misinterpretation and misapplication. So the committee did vote unanimously to have you reconsider those. And in our last meeting, we had Ms. Bonnie McFarland from the Insurance and Benefits, as well as Dr. Pruitt, come and discuss some of the insurance benefits and the choices that employees had. We were looking at different ways to potentially save the district money, comparing insurance plans benefits, and they were able to really answer a lot of our questions on why we weren't going out and finding just a market plan, if you will, rather than being self-insured and taking all of that risk in-house. So that was very good. March, we only had, and you'll note that during these meetings, we had 12 to 14, 15 participants in the meetings, and then March, we were required to meet face-to-face. In March, we only had 5 members, therefore we did not have a quorum. We did go ahead and meet, and we had a very good discussion around several things, but we weren't able to conduct any business because of the quorum requirement. We really got great participation in our meetings when we were doing the virtual meetings. I think that it helps our advisory committees because we are asking the public to commit time to these committees, and it cuts down on their required time commitment by reducing the commute time, allows a more, I think, vigorous discussion on the matter at hand, and it allows us to come up with reasonable recommendations to present to the board. That concludes our report, but I would like to ask the board members if there's anything that you feel we should move forward on. We are planning on doing some meetings during the summer. However, we weren't able to formalize those Based on the non-quorum being present, we hope that we'll be able to formalize that at our next meeting. So I'm open to any ideas or suggestions that you feel would be appropriate.
Okay, so board members. Yes, Ms.
Mr. Williams,
Jordan.
thank you so much for stepping in for Mr. Temlin today. I really appreciate that. And what he's saying was correct. We did not have, very few participated last month. We did have great conversation because we were permitted to do so. We also had, and I'm speaking as the liaison to finance, but we also had a person resign because of the fact that they had to come back in.
Yes.
And as I believe that we need to make sure that we are keeping our community involved, and we really should not be losing anyone because of this. So I think that whatever we have to do to make it okay for people to participate, I think that's what we need to make sure that we are doing. But and also I do bring, when they share their thoughts and concerns about what we need to do for the audit committee, I do bring that here, and I make sure that I share that with all of you, and I will continue to do so. Thank you, Sean. Mr. Williams.
Okay, and Mr. Williams, you wanted some input if the board had ideas on future topics? Is that, yeah. Does anybody have, yes, Mrs.
I don't have an idea for a future topic, but I do want to let you know, and if you could share this with your committee, I'm anxious for your feedback regarding the audit committee. There's a high degree of financial literacy in your committee, and whatever recommendations you can make so that we put together the tightest, best, most effective internal audit committee would really go a long way toward giving me the confidence I need to move forward in that process. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Mrs. Giovanelli.
I just want to thank you for being here on April 13th. Knowing your job, I said, wow, because I know you're very busy. So I just want to thank you for your dedication. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's true.
Anybody else? And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mr. Williams. So that concludes our presentations, our quarterly reports from our school board advisory committees. Next on our agenda, our Attorney Dupree Bruno, will actually be presenting a first reading briefing on 3 different policies. So I turn it over to our board attorney, Ms. Dupree Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first one was with regards to Board Policy 1.20, and that policy was actually pulled by me because there were some developments. And I did hear that Board Member Patrica mentioned Senate Bill 934. Do you want me to discuss it? Or?
I was actually going to ask you to discuss that during my comments, so thank you.
Okay, so for all of those members of the Board Advisory Committee, there may be some relief in sight. There is a bill, let me pull it up again, that is pending right now. It's sitting in appropriations. It is from Senator Wright. However, on April 7th, an amendment was made to the bill. And that bill specifically allows the school board to allow its advisory committees and special committees to have virtual electronic meetings. Right now, I just checked with Carol Green. It's still in appropriations. I think it's very important for us to draft a letter on behalf of the advisory committees to send to the committee to advise them of our support for this very important change. So if this passes, that alleviates all of our concerns.
Okay, comments? Mrs. Patrica.
So is there a House companion, do you know?
I don't see a House companion as of yet. There are some related bills, but I don't see that specific language. All I know at this time is that it's still in appropriations.
All right, and my concern about drafting a letter for our advisory committees to sign is perhaps they can't meet and have a quorum to vote to sign the letter, or perhaps they don't meet until session is almost over and this is behind us. Like, I can tell you for certain that I believe the Executive District Advisory Committee has the authority to send a letter on behalf of EDAC because they met last night, they had a quorum, a physical quorum, and they voted to do so. So I'd like to move ahead as quickly as we can with whatever committees we have agreement, and then, deal with the others as
Okay.
we can. Am I making sense?
No, the urgency is definitely there because we don't know how quickly this is going to move, so definitely we'll do that. And I'm also going to continue to work with Ms. Green to see what else we can do to try to push this forward. But this is a very early development.
All right, and do we need any kind of board consensus to?
Yes, I would like board direction to allow me to do that so we can move forward with this.
And you'll work with each committee separately? Great.
Yes. Mhm. And just so the board knows as well, at the last joint committee session, I was there, and this was a big topic of discussion, the virtual meetings, and I fielded a lot of questions. I tried to give as much guidance as possible. I sent a memorandum to everyone so they can kind of work as workshops while we go through this process, but now with this development from SBA 934, it makes a big difference.
Okay, so any other discussion before we do the consensus? Yes,
Just
Mrs.
one
Jordan.
question, please. Can we not send that out as a board for the committees?
As many letters that go out, the better. The board can send a letter, the district can send a letter, the advisory committees can send a letter. The more that we advise them that we are interested, we want this to pass, and this is from, the amendment came from Senator Pasadomo, so that's also very good for us to move it forward.
Perfect.
And my last comment is, really, Carol Green was huge.
I think Ms. Gittens had a
huge
comment.
in this.
Go ahead. You can finish.
I'm sorry to talk over you. I did not mean to do that.
Go ahead, Ms. Gittens.
No, that's fine.
All right, Ms. Patrica?
Just, Carol Green was huge in this. Carol Green was huge in getting what our advisory committees needed, so she deserves some recognition, I think, for the relationship she's been able to maintain with Senator Pasadomo.
Okay, before we do the consensus, Mrs. Gittens.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure I would like to have the consensus repeated in its entirety. But before that, I do have a question on, we seem to have a lot of our policies that are changed and edited to use the word shall. And I was speaking to some attorneys and also did some research on that, and I will send an article to all of you regarding that, and the fact that in some legal circles they do say that use of the word shall is one of the most highly litigated words in law at this time. So I will send that to you and hope that you would, we can look at this and take that into consideration and follow up on it in the future, please.
Okay, Mrs. Dupree-Bruno?
So I was just going to say, with regards to 1.20, we're not moving forward with that policy today. It's been pulled because of these new developments. And as we go through some of the other policies, we can discuss it. I know that when we get to that other policy, we can discuss the word shall.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we do the consensus, I did hear more ideas on who might be sending forth the letters. So would you repeat what you said when you asked for consensus?
We would like the board's consensus to be able to move forward to support the advisory committees, be it a letter from the board, the district, the advisory committees themselves, to support this amendment in SB 934 that allows advisory committees to meet electronically and virtually.
Okay, so consensus, please. Everybody has thumbs up, so it is unanimous. 7-0.
The next policy before the board is 5.081. There were no changes when this was first brought to the board. There are no changes now. This is just the first reading so we can be in compliance with the APA rulemaking process. Yes, I believe Ms. Morgan has a question.
Comments or questions on this one? Ms. Morgan?
I think there's a Scribner's error on line 17, or maybe I just have trouble reading it. And 3C, that whole section, as I read it, and I apologize if I brought this up the last time, as I read it, essentially, this is a 3-year certificate, non-renewable. And the question becomes, if that's the case, whether this does anything for us with respect to our career academies. And so I think one thing we need to think about going forward into the next legislative session is whether or not we want to address that. So I just wanted to make certain that I understand that correctly, Attorney Dupuy-Bruno, and if I do, then I will bring it forward at another time as a potential legislative item for 22.
Yes, you actually did bring this up last time as well. So yes, definitely, Ms. Morgan, that was a concern.
Okay.
Okay, other comments, questions, concerns? Anybody? Okay. Would you move on to the next policy, please?
The next one was the school names, and the changes in that were the shalls instead of shoulds. And the shall represents must versus giving any wiggle room that you don't necessarily need to abide by this particular language.
Mrs. Gittens.
I would like to know, was this your suggestion in review of policies, Attorney Bruno, or was this a suggestion from a board member?
So this came up in various discussions about in incidents or incidences that have happened with regards to school names, and to take a look at the policy to see if it could be strengthened in any way. And by removing the shoulds to shalls, it does strengthen the policy, because it's my understanding that what occurred was, because it said should, there was some confusion as to the process itself and what could and what must be done. That's why it was changed to shall.
Well, as I recall that discussion, it was about Gateway High School, and the conclusion that was presented is that there was going to be a strengthening of the process, not so much changing the policy that would be done, but to discuss what is the step-by-step process. Because I recall that part of the issue was the timing and when the community was involved, or when this group was involved, and who was to be involved at what particular time, and who, when the board was going to make a decision. And I don't know that I am, again, I sent all of you the article about the shalls, and I'm a little bit concerned about making it so hard and fast. And like I said, I don't remember if we ever did receive that formal policy that this is, we will do step 1, 2, 3, and 4. The process, not so much the policy. I'm concerned about changing the whole policy.
I can't speak to the process because that was not brought to my attention, and that was before my time and my tenure here. I know, for example, if you look at section line 69, for example, it says school names, the original language said school names and mascots should make reference to at least one of the following. So by leaving the should there, it does leave some wiggle room for there to be a change and you do not use these particular criterias. By adding the shall, it mandates it. So this is to strengthen this policy to ensure that there's not too much wiggle room, and there's a clear, I'm not sure about the process that you're talking about, but at least it's very clear in the policy what can and can't be done. That's the whole purpose of using the word shall.
Well, and I understand that, and I still disagree with that. Why can't there be some wiggle room? Why do we have to enforce so strictly? I mean, what if you have options to do certain things? That's why I'm saying, where is the process document? I would really like to see any process document as to how we do this And staff has the opportunity to go back to when we were naming Gateway High School. It's all there. What happened, the minutes and the videos, and I think we should revisit that because even though we don't have an opportunity to name schools in the recent past, it's still, there's a possibility for it to come up. And like I said, I don't agree with the shall. I'm requesting that you hold off on changing all of that until everyone does even review the article, and I have other information I can share with you about the shalls. I don't feel comfortable with doing that without the process document.
Okay, who else? Go ahead. Over there. Ms. Morgan?
So I think it should be strongly worded, but I also want to mention the fact that the board can at any time make exception to a policy, and if a strong argument is made for doing something else, that can certainly happen. But I think it's important that we have strong verbiage in this about under what circumstances things can be named. So it's just a reminder.
Who else? Yes, Mrs. Patrica.
Can you imagine a circumstance under which the district would be sued for violation of this policy? And just briefly thinking about it, I can't imagine a plaintiff filing a lawsuit against the district because we named a school Gateway High School and it violated our policy. Right? Like if we're talking about shall being the most litigated word, is there any real risk to the district here?
Now, I don't think there's a risk in that sense to the district. I think that if it's not clear and the public is not understanding what the process and the policy is, that's where you start to have problems. So the purpose of this is to give clarity to the public, clarity to the district as to what the process is, so that what happened last time is avoided. That's basically the purpose.
Right, and that really makes sense to me because there was a lack of clarity in the community. People read the policy and were like, you're not even following your own policy, when in fact the word should was in there, and so we had that wiggle room, and this I agree with that entirely. I'm very comfortable with moving forward, and if there's a litigation issue that people don't feel comfortable with, you can always change the shalls to must, and that is far less litigated. That is a far less litigated word than shall is.
Yeah, but I would say with regards to this policy, I mean, shalls are always litigated, statutes are always litigated, that's just what happens. But with regards to this statute, I don't see litigation coming out of this. This is the board's policy setting the process on how to name a school and clarifying for the public that this is basically our process and there's not a lot of wiggle room. We're not going to have all of these arguments and distinctions about should and shall. That's why the word shall is there. It's really just to clarify for the public and for the board and the district.
Other comments? Mrs. Jordan.
Thank you. I'm fine with the word shall because I think that we need to, we could or could not. I mean, that is like an iffy word. So shall makes it, definitely clarifies what we're asking or what we need to do. So I appreciate you doing this.
But may I ask a question to Ms. Giddens just for my clarification? What is it with regards to the word shall that is giving you consternation in this policy? Because I'm just looking at the policy, not shall as it is applied across the board. I'm just looking at this particular policy.
What's giving me angst is the way the discussion happened previously. And there was the reason, and I hear people talking about, well, they stop all the arguments or whatever. There was not a clear process. There was not a clear statement to the public that this is what we are going to do. We're going to name a high school, and step one is going to be this. We are going to get your input, and then we're going to take that input and we're going to do this. And then after that, we're going to do this. So to me, that, and I had spoken to Ms. Stillwell about this when this happened, and the whole thing was it was not clearly stated the process is this. So to me, it's what gives me angst about it is that it's overkill, that rather than saying to the public, here is our process, we'll just change this and say, well, this is the way it's going to be. period, you don't have any questions. That just bothers me.
Ms. Gittens, I understand what you're saying. I think that if you look at 4A, I think it does outline the process. Now, I think what you're referring to is what is that specific timeline, have it written down, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. But in terms of obtaining public input and that we need to get public input, I believe that's covered in 4A. This is not the detailed process document as to how to do that. It's the governing policy to explain to staff, this is our expectation that you're going to do this. I don't know if that helps to alleviate some of the concerns.
I understand that, but what public is going to look at when you talk about naming a school, I guarantee you the majority of them are not going to sit here and read this policy. I mean, read this the way it is. We just need something simple and clear and concise as a process document to go with this. That's all I'm saying. And thank you for asking why I brought it up.
Okay, anybody have additional comments, questions? Okay, actually, Mr. Prebrun, I was going to bring up 4A as well. There is, that's the only place that I like the shall in there. I agree with Ms. Gittens that it's a little loose on what process we will follow. I'm thinking that perhaps without putting a specific timeline, like we have 3 weeks for this and 5 weeks for that, maybe some of that could be tightened. I can live with it the way it is, but to me, that's one place where we might tighten up some of the language there. Every reasonable effort, that's such a subjective term. Mrs. Moran.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable for the board to ask at some point that the process document be brought forward if there's interest in the process document. But I don't think there's any reason to hold up the policy for the process document.
Okay. Mrs. Gittens.
And thank you both for those comments. As I look at 4A line 38 at the end, public input, reasonable effort does bother me as well, because it is so, that's however you want to do it. If we are making everything else so concrete with shall, and yet we have reasonable effort, that's pretty, out there. And then reasonable effort in obtaining public input. So we can say we asked 10 people and that was our reasonable effort. So if we're going to have that and be as stringent with the shall, we need to change that as well. And as it goes along further, it may include an appointment of an ad hoc committee. That's not clear at all. So anyone can decide, we're just going to do this. We don't have to. We may do it, but we don't have to. So if we're going to have the policy strengthened, we need to strengthen the policy.
Okay, additional comments on this? Yes, Mrs. Jordan.
Thank you. So instead of may, shall, then that is saying that it has to be.
I would agree with that. If you're going to say shall for everything else, then we shall have an ad hoc committee and we shall do polls and surveys and then the process document going along with that saying how that will work. I still say the problem we had was that people were not aware of what was step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what they were saying to me and what I heard is, oh, you guys did the one thing and we said this and then you changed in the middle of the stream. So if we lay that out, we don't have that problem. That I'm trying to protect us in the district and not having any difficulty in the future.
Yeah, and yes, Mrs. Morgan.
So my concern is binding future boards to a process in policy. I believe that we have, if we want to see the process document and we want to talk about the process document, that's great. But if we put process in policy, we bind future boards, and we have no way of knowing what the opportunities will be to communicate with the public. And so I understand what Ms. Gittens is saying, and I appreciate what she's saying. We learned a lot in the last process, and we know that there is something that we need to do. But I am just really averse to putting protocol or practice into policy and binding future boards.
We're
Can I just say?
We're going to wind down, so everybody who would like to make one more comment, Mrs. Gittens.
And can I just say, but Ms. Morgan, I thought you said previously that if we needed to change it, we just change policy. When we look at our policies, many of them have revision year after year, and that's what the opportunity of the new boards will have, is to change policies.
So I have a question of Attorney Dupuy-Bruno. The board does have the option to say at some point, we choose to override our policy if it's a supermajority of the board for one time, correct?
You can do that.
Yes. So I'm not talking about changing the policy. I'm just talking about if there's an extraordinary circumstance, we as a board do have that flexibility.
Now, the only thing I would say, add to that, Ms. Morgan, is that you do want to get the policy to the best that you possibly can, so you do not have to go to those measures.
I agree.
So may I make a recommendation and see, to the pleasure of the board, what you think? If we go back to line 38, it says shall include reasonable effort. What if we took out include reasonable effort in obtaining and say shall obtain public input?
Fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would that be better?
And then that other may include appointment of an ad hoc.
So I'm a little leery about the may include, and the reason I do that, because the reason I'm leery about that, if we say shall include public input, so the district administration has to get public input, but I'm leery in tying their hands on how they go about with getting that public input.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
Right, and if I may, if you can't really eliminate the may, because if you put a shall there, it's going to sound like you have to do all those things. Those are just suggestions, and so I think our attorney has come up with an excellent way to portray this. Shall get public input, and then these are suggestions, which it doesn't say that we're limited to those.
And is this the first reading?
Yes, this is
First reading,
yeah.
so you can add those to it. We don't have to take a consensus for you to add that.
I'm still going to want a consensus that this move forward with the changes that we've talked about today.
Okay, would you repeat the changes so everybody's clear?
So the change is on line 38. It's going to read, shall obtain public input.
Did you have something else?
No, I'm just saying yes.
All right, so consensus on those changes for the next reading.
And I'm sorry, but you're still going to leave the and may include?
I'm leery in taking that out and making it stronger, because I do think
No,
that...
that's fine.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I'm just saying when
The
you
rest
read
would
that
stay
one
there.
part, the rest is the same.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so unanimous 7-0. Thank you. All right, so.
If I may also just get consensus on that prior policy.
Sure.
Ms. Morgan, I'm looking at the statute and I'm not pinpointing it just yet, but I did look at line 17 also. I believe that's the wording from the statute itself. I know it's a little confusing, but I'm going to double check on that. One line 17 that you were talking about. With the exception of me double checking line 17, may I have consensus to move forward with the adjunct teacher policy?
Okay, that consensus, please.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. What are you consensus?
This is about lines. Go ahead, repeat it, please, Ms. Dupree.
I did not get consensus on board policy 5.081, the one that we did prior to the school names. I just want to be able to move it forward.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, thumbs up, 7-0, approved. Okay, does that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the next presentation, and we will do a 5-minute break after this presentation is operations, Franklin Park, project scoping, and engagement. And there's quite a list of presenters here. Are you all going to be sitting together or one at a time, or how's that? Miss Kathy Eba is top of the list, so I'm not sure how you're going to do this. Down here? Okay, so then, Mrs. Eba, if you would introduce then your panel when you're ready.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh.
Good afternoon. Afternoon.
Adam is going to run our presentation, so.
Mic's on. You're a little low.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Can always hear
Not
me.
yours, Kathy.
You don't even need a
Testing,
mic.
testing.
Okay. And we are very excited to bring to you today a project update on the Franklin Park Elementary School. Today we have with us our principal, Michelle Freeman, and I'll let her introduce the rest of our team.
Good afternoon, Board and Dr. Atkins. I am the proud principal for Franklin Park Elementary, a community partnership school. And we are the first of our kind for Lee County, so I'm so excited. And I'm excited for this next phase that we are about to take on for our school. Today I have with us Miss Angela Jackson, who is a part of the community partnership, and she's through United Way, also the director. I have Miss Kaylee Rodden, and of course, Ms. Kathy Ebach, who will be doing the presentation.
Welcome.
And I will start by sharing that we're going to just do a brief overview of the community partnership school model, as well as then a presentation on the rebuild project and then our next steps. So you can move to the next slide, Adam. I would first just like to share that myself and Kathleen Keck worked back in fall of 2019 on getting this grant through United Way. Kathy Keck did a lot of the writing of the grant with United Way, and without her, we definitely would not have gotten this great opportunity. So she's not here with us, but I would like to thank her for that work. And we worked with Hannah Pell at United Way, who is the Vice President of Community Impact. And thanks to Dr. Savage, we were able to meet Hannah and work very closely together on this project. So the first most important thing is that we needed 4 core partners to move forward on this grant opportunity. And the first one is United Way. We needed a nonprofit to run the grant, and that is our key nonprofit. And we also have the school district, of course, and Lee Health and FGCU. So without those partners, this would not be possible, and they've been wonderful to work with, and we're very excited on this endeavor. And I'm going to pass it over to Miss Angela, who actually is the director and works on this project.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here today. So like Kaylee said, I am the proud director of the Community Partnership School at Franklin Park Elementary. I've been with United Way for about 18 years, and I'm working in various communities, mainly Harlem Heights, where I was born, but I was super happy to be approached with this new project, and because it's my forever job. I know that I was born with the ability to help people, and this particular project allows me to create opportunities for the school, the students, the staff, as well as the community. So it's everything I love to do wrapped up in one. So what does that look like? Like Haley said, this model works. It's tried and true. It's a partnership with University of Central Florida. They provided us the seed money to start this project over at Franklin Park Elementary. And thank goodness for United Way, because they were able to put additional funding in it to create my staff. So I cannot do this without the core partners, the staff, and buy-in from everyone. If you look up at the screen, you'll see there's 4 parts to this. So we have our 4 pillars, as well as our 4 different partner agencies. We have a family and community engagement coordinator who works directly with the families and communities. We have an expanded learning coordinator who works directly with the school, the children, and staff to bring in other learning opportunities. We have collaborative leadership, is kind of what we're doing today. We're mission-driven, we're data-driven, but we're driven by the community. You guys guide us and tell us what's needed. Oftentimes, agencies will come into the schools, the community, and tell them what they need. We're driven by our cabinet, which is, we're happy to have our leader with us today, and also Debbie Jordan, who's on our cabinet. We're driven by you guys. You determine how we proceed and how we're going to work with the school, the students, the parents, and again, we never want to leave out the teachers and the staff at Franklin Park, because we take on a holistic approach. We're here to serve everyone. If our teachers are not healthy, if they're not well, they cannot serve the students, right? So when we look at this model, we're not just bringing social services to the school, we're also bringing other opportunities to the school. When we first started in January of 2020, we moved into the school, we did asset mapping. Franklin Park was already doing great things on campus that nobody really knew about in the public, right? So we were able to sit down with everybody, find out what was going on with the school, who was doing what, when, and where, and how we could build on it. We wanted to create more access, create more services. After we did that, we created a needs assessment to find out what was needed. We surveyed the students, the staff, the community, as well as the parents. So based on that needs assessment and our strategic plan, we're able to move forward with the help of the community to determine what's next. If you look at the screen again, you'll look at some of our programs and services, and everything you see there is totally free. We're able to provide food to the students every weekend, food for the entire weekend. Every child that leaves school on Friday will receive a bag of food that will last them through Sunday. We have formed a student leadership council where our family engagement coordinator meets with them weekly, teaching them leadership skills, and they're going to start attending our cabinet meetings as well. So I could go on and on about the great things that we do at Franklin Park, but what we need is we need space. We need space to explore. We need space so we can create what we call our parent resource room. So when our parents in the community, when they come on campus, we're able to provide computer classes. We're able to provide employment opportunities. So the next slide also shows some of our, kind of our 5-year plan when we're working with the community. If you look up there, the big piece of this is wellness. We have a wellness coordinator. We're working to have a school-based health clinic on site that serves the students, as well as the teachers, as well as the staff. What would happen if one of our teachers got sick, they had to leave campus? That's hours that they lose at work. So we're trying to create a space where everyone can be seen, if needed, by the student-based clinic, and also have access to this clinic for the community as well. So that is a piece that we're working on right now. Like I said, we just hired a wellness coordinator who is spearheading the wellness piece, and we're partnering with United Way. We have a We Care program, and we're also partnering with Lee Health for this piece of the program. Next slide, please. So this year we were able to save money on campus, and we provided free income tax program right there in our library, in our media center, where we had 12 families come. and get their taxes down for free. So to give you guys an example, we're trying to get rid of all barriers. So normally when you give someone information and referrals, they have to go to that particular agency to get the help they need. We are eliminating all barriers and bringing those services right there on campus. So if we identify a need, we will contact that agency and we will get them to come on campus when they're allowed to provide services. Right now we've shifted and everything we're doing right now is virtual. Next slide, sir. So if you look at our organizational chart, it just gives you an idea of where everybody fits in. I have a wellness person, I have expanding learning, and also family and engagement coordinator. Next slide, sir. Thank you. So if you look at the budget, where is the money? Where is the money coming from? So that's what everybody wants to know. So like I said, last year we were awarded seed money by the University of Central Florida. It was just startup money, and United Way put in the rest of the money. So we're always looking at sustainability. How can we continue to grow this program? So the award that we were awarded by UCF, it's for 5 years. This year, it went up to $150,000, and it grows a little bit each year for 5 years. I will say with the Biden administration, things are looking great in that they want to grow community schools. So, but we know that we have 3 more years actually, to receive money from UCF, but we're constantly exploring where funds are coming from. And like I said, United Way, we're in the business of asking for donations, so that's never been a problem for us. Thank you for all they gave. So we just wanted to share that with you so you can see a piece of the budget and how much United Way has invested in this and how much money is coming from UCF. This year's grant is $150,000. We were awarded an extra $30,000 for COVID relief, and what we're doing right now is bringing in some services, social and emotional learning, trauma care for the kids, and that's how we're spending down that extra COVID funding. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Ebar. Any questions for me? Is now the time to ask? Okay, yes.
She had her hand. Well,
One of you go first.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I read today that the federal government is seriously funding or considering funding for community schools. Is that the same concept that you are talking about, or is that a different animal?
So I'm not sure about what you read today, but there is some federal funding out there for community schools, and we've explored going after some of those grants as well. But there is quite a bit of money, federal money out there as well to support this effort.
Okay, so essentially this school could become a pilot for other schools if more money is forthcoming for community schools.
Absolutely. The plan is to go from cradle to career, and we want to follow our students from elementary to their middle school career on to high school. That is the absolute plan.
Thank you.
The other federal connection here, though, and I assume you were probably going to bring it up, but this is one part of the Choice Neighborhood Initiative in terms of the school district's contribution. So the partnership that we have with United Way, Lee Health, University of Central Florida, and in addition to the rebuild that we're doing, is an overall part of the city of Fort Myers's proposal to HUD that took place actually last week. A group of us here participated in that. I had a really short presentation, and we hope to hear back the result of that. That's that whole Southward Village project.
Okay.
Hope to hear back on that at the end of this month or early next month is what we were told. We're in competition with, let me see if I get these right, Cleveland, Detroit, Camden, New Jersey, and there's one in Maine.
Lewiston, Maine.
Lewiston, Maine, thank you. And we're the 5th one. So last week was the opportunity for everybody present. Predominantly it was City of Fort Myers and their partners, but we're one of the partners that's participating in all of this that you're hearing today is really and the money that's being put into this, from the rebuild to the whole thing you just heard about, is a part of our overall contribution to the overall effort to win this award.
Okay, Mrs. Gittens.
You mentioned about, thank you for the presentation, all of you, and you mentioned about the COVID funds. Is that specifically like for the mental health, I'm sorry, for the mental health and all of that? And I saw a program on there, Beasley's Paw Prints. Is that mental health related, and can you give us just a few words about that?
Yes, so the Beasley Preference is a United Way program. It's for trauma-informed care, where we have trained dogs and pets that come in to places to help kids cope with coping mechanisms and help them with to be able to understand their feelings and communicate. And so we have that particular one. We have videos right now. Because of course they can't come on campus, but the goal is when we open back up to be able to have those pets, to have that program come in live in person on campus to help the children with that particular need. When we did our assessment, as you can imagine, mental health was top. It is a priority of Principal Freeman's. And especially when we came back, it is a priority, not just for the students, of course, but we're also looking at giving services to our providers, to our teachers as well, because they need it as well. We all need it on some level. So yes, that is priority at the school. And when we sat down to talk about how we were going to spend down those funds, we sat with our cabinet, we looked at our needs assessment, we looked at the overall need of the schools and got feedback. I'm constantly, my team, we're constantly assessing the needs of the school to see what's needed. Because our needs assessment was done pre-COVID, but things are constantly changing. But what's not changing is the need for mental health services.
So can I ask, is it fair to say then that right now you're running all of these different programs without the facility space per se, and that comes later?
Yes.
But you're in there doing all of this now with the space available in partnership with our school. Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Other questions, comments? Okay, I just have something brief. Do you know what states have been most successful in developing this model? This is a model I read about probably back at least 6 years ago, and I thought, wow, this is perfect for our area. What states or school districts, big school districts, have been the most successful?
Harlem Zone in New York City is one of the most successful ones. That's one that they want us to go visit if my sister actually lives down the street from Harlem Zone, so I'm very familiar with it. But so Harlem Zone in the city, but the most successful one here, because UCF partners with a bunch of community partnership schools, would be ACE, which is in Orlando. They have, our goal is to become a certified community partnership school as well.
Right.
So because we're under the umbrella of UCF, we have standards, we have deliverables, we have lots of reporting that we have to do. We just did one yesterday. We do it quarterly. So we're constantly reporting back to UCF, and normally it takes a school about 5 years to become certified. So that's one of our long-term goals as well.
And is the climate, the political climate, one that enhances it? I think maybe we got lucky with the federal government in doing this right now, but is the political climate one that will help support our efforts here, do you think?
I think so. I do know that when it was on the budget, there were talks about cutting when it was to be signed, there were talks that it was going to get cut by DeSantis, but he did not cut anything. He did sign it. Yeah. And just recently, like I said, Biden has made this a priority, so we're really happy and looking forward to it. Because we only can expand if we have more money, if we have more funding, and our goal is not to wait on UCF to give us those opportunities. We're constantly keeping our finger on the pulse to see who has money to help us. It takes about a minimum of $350,000 to start this project up at a school.
Okay, great. Anything else? Okay. Next part of the presentation, please.
As was mentioned, we're doing great work with this project, but we need a great facility to be able to really expand on our services and be able to provide for the needs of the community as they've asked for, specifically in some of the wellness areas, and having that on-site healthcare system and facility. So it happens to be that we are finally approved to rebuild our campus, and it comes at a really good time because now we have the ability to provide for the facilities of not only the educational facilities that Principal Freeman is looking forward to, but also for the community services as we've just talked about them. The current capacity on campus is 615 students. It's 36 pre-K, 579 K through 5. Our goal is to increase that capacity to 800 student stations. But that gives us some space because our current prototype allows for approximately 1,000 student stations. So that allows for about 9,000 square feet to be utilized by the community wraparound program. So we will increase our capacity from our existing campus to our new campus, but still allow for, within our prototype, the ability to retrofit some of our facility so that we can provide for these community wraparound programs, specifically for the social and health and for adult educational services. Those are the services that would be enhanced if we could improve the facilities and provide for additional facility space on the campus. Our project timeline, our goal is to be open by '24. So in your packets today was the draft scope that if you approve, we will submit that for an RFQ, and we'll start the RFQ process. That takes us about 4 to 6 months. Then by the spring, or by the fall, we'll be in design. Design takes us about 12 months, and then we'll get into construction. We will need to relocate the existing campus to a portable campus. We haven't yet determined exactly where that will be yet, but they will be in a portable campus in the community somewhere, not on the site. We don't have enough space on the site. I should have mentioned on the previous slide, you saw that the campus was all X'd out except one building. That is the building that the state has told us that we need to maintain. There it is back on the slide, Building 16. The state has told us we need to maintain that, although they have given us, which they don't normally, they have given us permission to revisit this in the design process. If we can show the state that keeping Building 16 does not allow us to accomplish the goals of this campus, then they will allow us to re-ask for that building to be allowed for removal. Right now, they don't see it as a need to remove that building, but they will give us the permission as we go through design to evaluate it yet again. Then after the portable campus and the construction, our goal again is to open by '24. Some of the key points of our draft scope, again, the full scope is in your packet, but we will be evaluating site and infrastructure. We will be looking at the existing infrastructure that we have, the transportation systems that we have, how Building 16 fits into all of that. Our stormwater systems, we'll be looking at utilities, we'll be looking at safety, all of the existing campus, even though we're raising most of the buildings and the campus, we're going to be evaluating it thoroughly to understand how to use our prototype, because it is our intent to use our district elementary prototype on this project, to use it in a way that best utilizes the campus facility. And then, again, we will be looking at our student stations, our goal being about 800 student stations, 9,000 square foot for community services, and then what to do with Building 16. And again, we've been given permission by the state to re-petition them if we determine that Building 16 is better removed. But we do have some ideas of what we could use Building 16. We want to have a pre-K center on this campus. So we could use that building for a pre-K center. We could use that building as the building for the community wraparound programs. We could use it in other functions. When we say we need to keep that building, what we need to do is keep the four walls. Everything interior to the building can be raised and repurposed. So it's not that we actually have to keep the building in its current configuration. We just have to keep the four walls and then look at what we can do in the interior. The challenge is the location of the site. And if we were to use it either for a pre-K center or for the community wraparound program, how would we provide for access to that facility, considering it's in what we expect to be the back of the campus? And then we'll go into the construction process. The construction will raise the campus, we'll move the students to a portable campus, and then we will do our traditional construction project. In terms of communication and community engagement, Ms. Freeman, do you want to take the first bullet?
One of the big things that I spoke to Kathy about is that the community needs to have a voice. And we came up with the Project Vision Workshop. I asked her if by that time we could be able to show something to the community, as well as give them an understanding of what the community partnership is, because people really don't know what it is. And just give them an opportunity to ask questions and give some input.
So on May 4th, we'll have a vision workshop. This is pre-design. We will just be starting the RFQ process with your permission of approving the scope today. But we do want to still have a discussion with the community before we get into design about what exactly things that they care about. Some of the things that we've already heard are there are certain aspects of the current campus that they want to maintain. They want to do something with repurposing bricks. They want to do, there are certain key features on the campus, certain monuments, I guess is the best word to use, that they want to make sure get repurposed in the next campus. Those are the things that we want to hear from the community at this first meeting, as well as give Angela and her team an opportunity to explain what the project is in terms of community wraparound program, and what new assets are going to come in play with this new program. Hopefully also by then, as Dr. Atkins mentioned, we will know what the status of the grant with that the federal government is going to bequest on us, and we're going to be the winner of the 5 cities. So we can talk a little bit about that program and how that ties in, because as you know, the location of that program and our program are right next to each other, and we're really, having that partnership is going to be critical to us. That project is a mixed-use project and a mixed income project. So there's going to be different types of uses on the campus on that project. There'll be some commercial uses, as well as some much needed business uses, economic uses, as well as a variety of different homes uses. So that project will be completely revision what Southward Village is today into something very different in the future. And then with our rebuild and the partnership we have with the community wraparound program, we think that this is really going to make for a strong cornerstone in the central part of this community. So the May 4th will be our project for workshop, and then we will continue, as we do with our projects, we will continue to have other design efforts. Once we actually get into design, we'll have a kickoff of the project. We will have evaluation of our draft site plans, similar to the meeting that we just had in Estero. We'll have a final design meeting so that they can see what the campus really will look like, and give Ms. Freeman the drawing she's excited to see. And then we'll have our groundbreaking, our construction progress updates, and finally our groundbreaking once we're into construction. So the community engagement will mostly be on the front end as we're in design, because once you get into construction, there's just not as much opportunity for the community to have engagement, as we have already decided what the project is. But until we get to the point of construction, they'll be very much engaged with us. So in terms of our next steps, there are a few things that we need today. The first is we need a consensus that the scope that was provided for you is acceptable, and that will allow us to put this out for an RFQ. And then we just wanted to let you know about the community wraparound meetings, which Angela is going to talk a little bit about, and the stakeholder engagement, which Angela also will discuss. So the one thing that we need from our side so that we can get this out to an RFQ is consensus that the scope that was provided for you is acceptable.
Okay, is this a good time for questions, or is there something else?
Nope, this is the end. We're open to questions and consensus on the RFQ.
Mrs. Gittens has a question, then Ms. Jordan.
Yes, thank you. It was very good presentation, and I like the fact of involving the community early. That is a critical piece. My question is, where you're talking about Southwood Village, you're talking about the school, and how does that connect with right down the street with the Stars Complex, which right now is a very vital part of the community and what is going on? So is there some type of partnership or working together with those three entities?
Yes, the Stars Complex is part of the Southward Village project as well. So that is all in partnership with that larger piece that Dr. Adkins spoke to.
And as far as like programs and that type of thing, are we looking at, we can do this program here and this one here and this one here?
So we, with the Stars Complex, right now, we're kind of considering an extension of our campus, if you will, because we do have children that go to the Stars Complex. But at Franklin Park, what we're working on is extending the services and creating programs and services so they stay on campus for a number of reasons, for continuity of services, and also for continuity of staff members. So if they're with their teacher, Miss Kaylee, in the school during the day, and then Miss Kaylee happens to be their tutor, or she's in their engagement activity after school, they're familiar with her, and we want to keep that continuity of services and create programming that makes the child want to stay on campus. And of course, there are other programming outside of the school that we won't offer, such as football and things like that the Stars do. But we really want to work with our child on campus with the same staff members for continuity of services.
And I can understand that, especially with, with one of the focuses is helping with the achievement gap. That is an optimal. And I'm just devil's advocate here, wondering how will that affect the Stars Complex, since they have after-school programs and all that as well. And in your working with them, dividing up those opportunities more so to work together for various programs. So thank you.
Okay.
And Ms. Jordan and then Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. And I'm going to kind of elaborate on that as well, because I sit on that committee as well for Southward Village. The Stars Complex is being, they're increasing that. So they're going to be putting a lot of money, the city is putting a lot of money into the Stars Complex to add value to that, because that's all belongs to the same area, same with the Kerry Robinson Center. So all of that has been taken into thought when they're trying to do this. It just so happens that the Southward Village needs the education component, and that's how we tie in with that area to make it all work for this grant. And it's a win-win for all of us, I mean, for the community in itself, which is a great opportunity. But I just have to say, it's been such a privilege to sit on this committee, both of those committees, and work with all of you, because, Angela, you're great, you do a fabulous job. I mean, Ms. Freeman, she's on top of everything, and the babies, your babies that you call them. And I'm just so happy that this is finally taken off. I mean, it seems like it's been going on forever. And also I wanted to, the people that will be coming on the campus, and I know, Ms. Sebald, you didn't mention that about them coming, they would have like a separate entrance, so they would not be coming in into the school where the children would be. It would be a separate entrance is what we're looking at doing, correct?
Right, that's why the Building 16 is a challenge, because we would have to have a separate access to that facility, and it is a tight space. The property itself is tight, so how we would make that work might be a challenge, and that's why we petitioned the state to allow us the ability to relook at that as we get into the design.
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear that we're not having everybody walking through the schools, that it would be a separate entrance for those special things that you have going for the community in itself. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you for this presentation. It's really exciting, from the inception of the grant and the development of all of the partnerships that are involved, in addition to the main ones. I just am so excited about this, partially because the ongoing services are going to allow the community to be part of the whole development of the final project. And I think that this specific timeline and the whole presentation that you have prepared really gives us hope for future projects. And I'm thinking this is going to be from the time the grant was started. I mean, this is like a long-term project. So I think that in addition to the construction and the building of the involvement and the excitement of the community, is that so many good things are going to happen in the meantime, and that the kids will continue to be educated, as well as their families having services that are going to help them to be, much more involved in their education. So thank you for your hard work, and this is great. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Patrica?
So I think Ms. Schaefer, is she here? I think she knows when I'm reviewing board documents in advance of meetings, because I send her stream of consciousness emails in response to the presentations or with questions. After I reviewed this presentation, I emailed the superintendent, outstanding presentation. What I did not anticipate was how much you would bring it to life, Dr. German. Is that how I say your name?
No, Angela.
Yes, Dr. German is our assistant principal, the director. It's okay.
Okay, Angela, thank you. I don't like to call people by their first name in a meeting, but if that's what you want, that's what I'll do. So I did not anticipate that, and you really brought this to life for me and got me even more excited about it than I was when I sent that email. Ms. Freeman, I miss you a lot. I never see you anymore. I suspect that my colleague, Ms. Jordan, spends a lot of time with you.
She does.
So I don't want to overwhelm you with too many board members, but I feel the passion and the love for your kids. And I think that I also saw a lot of passion from you, Ms. Eba, to the extent that you can express passion. Because this is truly a community building project for you, right? And this is what you love. You're even laughing, which I don't know that I've ever seen you do.
So I think you asked me once about a project, and I said no. Of all the projects we're working on, this is my heart. When I became a planner, this is why I became a planner 25 years ago. And so this is really exciting for me. And this is about the most expression event you're going to get.
Yes.
Unless you're my son and you're in trouble, then he gets a little more expression and
It's just good to see joy coming from the work that you're doing for our kids. So I really, really appreciate it. The other thing, Ms. Freeman, that I wanted to mention to you is I love that you're driving the community, the communication in your community. You know your community. You're the leader of that building. You know your kids. You know your families. And so for you to provide guidance to the district as to how best to communicate and get the community engagement surrounding the development of this process is really fantastic. And obviously, you'll be getting my consensus support today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Giovanelli, do you have questions?
Yeah, actually, it's a couple statements. So actually, this is true community collaboration, and at its finest, I'm going to tell you. So I know this has been a long process, Ms. Jackson, because we met a couple years ago, I think now, when you first started. So in there, and so I'm very excited for you guys, and excited for the Franklin Park School. Thank you, Ms. Freeman, for championing this, because this is an awesome thing. I just had a couple questions. Building 16, that's the media center, right? Now, presently, or that's like, what is that?
No, it's the academic building in the northeast side of campus. It's kindergarten and 5th grade right now.
Okay, I was curious what that was, and then
the media center. We even though the media center and the administration building are the same age as Building 16, because of their location on campus, we were given permission to raise those two buildings. It's Building 16 we were not.
Yeah, I remember that being the concern when this all started, the process started. So then the gym, are we not going to get the replacement of the gym? That was the big topic back in construction advisory. They really tried to keep the gym.
So SREF standards, state standards, don't allow us to have a gym at the elementary level, but we will be doing a covered playground that we will work with.
Okay, thank you, because I know that everybody wanted to keep the gym. So,
It is not a
no,
gym, it is a covered pavilion.
I know, okay. The co- The covered pavilion, I need to learn that, okay. But anyways, yeah, I just want to thank you all for your efforts on this, and I am excited to see the outcome on grand opening day 2024. Thank you so much.
Did you?
No, I'm excited. It has been a long time coming, and we really need it in this community, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can say ditto to all the things that I've heard. I love the idea of the community school model, and I love the idea of, really, this sounds like it'll be actually a true neighborhood school as well as the community school model. So, yeah, and it has been a long time. I knew Miss Jordan was, she had like one of those calendars like you do at Christmas, right? Countdown. So it looks like we don't have any more questions. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, you did have another. Oh, I'm sorry. I almost forgot the consensus. So we need, as a next step, board consensus on moving ahead. And it looks like we have 7 thumbs up. It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Again,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, so I promised a break. We're on time, and so it is, what time is it? 3:56, is it? 2:56? So let's do a
Good job, ladies.
5.5-minute break. Okay, and Veterans Park people, you'll be up after our break. We are now going to have a presentation on Veterans Park Academy for the Arts, project scoping and engagement, and we have a panel of people, and Dr. Jeff Spiro is going to take over and introduce as needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vaughn. Good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the re-imaging project for the existing Lehigh Acres Middle School building, along with the Veterans Park Academy for the Arts. And so as we begin this presentation, this really is a cross-divisional piece of work between academic services and operations, which is why you're going to see a variety of different individuals that are here today as part of the presentation. And so I do want to take a moment, and I would like to introduce some of the individuals that are here today. In the audience, I first want to welcome Principal Ed Carter, who is here today. They like to call him Coach Carter. So, Coach, thank you so much for being here. He is here in support of this project and has been part of this process all along, so we want to thank him. Kathy Ebaugh is here from the Operations Department. Kathy is going to talk to us this afternoon about the project background on both the Lehigh Acres Middle School site as well as the Veterans Park site. So she's going to share some of that with you. And then she's going to turn it over to Adam Malloy. Adam is here, and Adam's going to talk to us about the community feedback form that we had and the process that he went through to analyze that feedback from the community and what those recommendations were. Adam will be sharing that. And then he's going to pass it off to our school development team, Dr. Denise Carlin and Linda Mayer. They are here, and they're going to talk to you about some of the school configuration concepts that were proposed that evening, and then based around the community feedback that you're going to hear from Mr. Malloy, what that final recommendation is that they're going to bring forward to the board today. And then Kathy Ebaugh will finish off the conversation about next steps. And so through each part of today's presentation, each of the presenters will stop after their section and they'll ask for questions at that time. And so there'll be short segments of information and then a chance for us to engage with you in our conversation. But this is really a complex process with multiple considerations. And so nobody's better to explain these gears of multiple considerations than our very own Dr. Savage, who's our Chief Operations Officer, and he's going to talk to us just a little bit about the complexities. Dr. Savage.
Thank you, Dr. Spiro, and good afternoon, board. Just as we've often talked, these projects are so complicated and there's so many different facets to it. And so think of like a machine with various gears working together. They all have to work harmoniously. So when we're making a decision of this magnitude, we're not focused strictly on, say, capacity and what the capacity needs are, but yet we have to ensure that whatever decision we make addresses those capacity needs. We also want to make sure that it's a safe and efficient operation, as well that it's as being administratively feasible. But also we want to gather input. So you'll see not just the community input, but faculty, staff, students, to get all that input. And then of course we want to make sure that it's optimized for our best academic outcomes, that it's rooted in the research and so forth. So you're trying to balance all these different, in some cases, competing considerations to try to land at a reasonable output. So just to kind of frame that visually for us before we move on. At this time, I'd like to allow Ms. Ebaugh to take it from here.
So this project has had many iterations, as Dr. Savage just mentioned. We've considered things from various different viewpoints, and you see a cross-departmental team, and we've all had our chance to have our thoughts expressed in our team meetings about what this should be. And I think what you're going to see as a result is that we've really been very thoughtful about where we're coming and where we're going. So we started with the campus. When we rebuilt and are just about to open the brand new Lambs campus, this provided us an opportunity, given that the site is just 3 miles away from Veterans Park and the original Lambs campus. We recognized early when we were kind of looking at a map, we had an aha moment, I think, between Linda Mayer and myself, of, wow, these two campuses are really close together. These 3 campuses are really close together, and how do we work these campuses together? So we came up with some things that we needed to do. We wanted to, because of an opportunity to move the original Lambs to the new Lambs. This would give us some opportunities to enhance the original Lambs, which we needed to do anyways. We knew we needed to upgrade that facility and build on the brand that is Veterans Park. It gave us an opportunity to think about how we could unify these two campuses that are literally a stone's throw. Of someone with a good arm, not myself, could probably throw a football from one campus to the other and hit the buildings. So we wanted a chance to be able to unify that campus, to unify it not only in a physical term, but also in a character term. How do you take the character that is Veterans Park and expand it to the Lamb side? And looking at a performing arts center, it's something that had been promised the Lehigh community for a very long time, and using that kind of performing arts center as a place, if you can imagine the linkage between the two campuses with a performing arts center, how it could really unify that campus and take two campuses and make it one whole one. It also provided us, and I think Ms. Mara is going to further explain this idea, but it provided us an opportunity to set the new Lambs up for success.
Oh, yep, our new Lambs opened for the first time, and Dr. Savage has specific numbers on this, but for the first time ever with the highest rate of selection for that school ever. And I know Dr. Gibson had a big part of that. I know that in his leadership, but I also know there's been great leaders there. You know, Nikita Watson was there. There's been previous great leaders, and it's never in the history, and I'll make sure I get that correct.
Yes, I just want to reiterate that. So, you know, parents, we often want to get parent input. Well, parents speak with their choices. They tell us what they want through their choice selection process. They communicate loudly. In the history of Lambs, they've never been the highest selected school since we've been doing this particular piece based on first choices. They had the highest % first choice in the zone. Now, it was by a small shred, but they have not been in that conversation in the past. And so this happens to also align with when they were opening up in that new building. So not only do we have the parents, you know, kind of saying, hey, this is where we want our sixth graders to go to this new campus, but you're able to open that facility full, which is an efficient use of taxpayer dollars, but not disrupting that school's future. We've had many schools that have opened up not quite full, but they end up getting kind of all the families that are essentially just moving to the community after the fact, students that are getting kicked out of other schools, those underselected schools. Those things make it harder for a school in a new facility to be successful. We've seen that unfortunately happen with schools such as Okamic, Harns Marsh Middle, even Bonita High, where you end up with lower achievement to start with, and then it takes that school starting behind and having to counteract that. This allows that school to remain that continuity, open up full from day one, with their sixth grade as well. Just a tremendous opportunity, and it's reflected in that choice statistic. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Yep. And Dr. Gibson was very excited about sharing that news with me and Dr. Savage, so I was very excited to share with you guys.
So there were some proposed facility changes. As you know, we have already selected the architect and the CM for this project, and we had developed the scope of work for this project back in the fall, working with Mary Blackman, who was the principal at the time, as well as our interdepartmental team. And there were some things that we knew we needed to do on this campus. We needed to upgrade the science facilities. We needed to upgrade the elective classrooms. There's an elective classroom in that facility that is a dance, and it's a fake floor over top of a carpeted floor. We wanted to make that a true dance studio. So there were things that we knew we needed to do at this project, and it didn't matter, and it doesn't matter what the administrative programming, which we're going to talk about later, does. Either way, these are things that need to happen on this campus. We need a new science lab. We need new elective facilities. We need to expand the character of VPAA so that it meets the entire area. And we need to take care of some maintenance issues. We know that Lambs is an older campus, and we have some maintenance issues that we want to take care of, and it gives us an opportunity to do so, given that we have some swing space. We have those infamous portables on that campus, but in this opportunity, this time, portables offer an opportunity for us because we can use those portables for student stations while we're in the interior of the building, renovating it and bringing it to make it the shiny penny that we know that it can be. So it gives us the opportunity to make sure that capacity needs, as Dr. Savage talked about earlier, are met while still being able to provide for an active campus and a construction active campus. So, and then we wanted to establish a performing arts center. This was in our 5-year plan. It was out, if you remember last year's 5-year plan, we had the design money for this project out in year 5. We're now going to bring that forward so that we can get this performing arts center done now as part of this project. And we're going to renovate those elective classrooms. We're going to support our ESE program. That was something that we've heard even back in the fall. Ms. Blackman was very, very strong about how we needed to make sure that the ESE programs were taken care of, and we look at the classroom facilities that the ESE classrooms are in and make sure that they meet our current standards. And I think Adam's going to tell you that we heard that again from the community. So what we heard, and then overall improving our athletic facilities, our playgrounds, our play fields. What we heard from the community, when you looked back at the RFQ, which nobody, the public hadn't necessarily seen unless they went out and found it, when you heard from the community input and you looked at the RFQ that we used and the scope that we had developed, they were both echoed and confirmed. The community and the staff and the teamwork behind it were saying the same things. They were very much in line. So if you looked at that original RFQ and the scope that we developed back in the fall that we used to select our CM and our architect, and you heard the community input that we received a couple of weeks ago, you would, if I asked you to figure out which one it was, unless you understood that the notes were from the community and the typed up document was from us, you wouldn't know because they were the same comments. It was the same feedback. They very much echoed and confirmed each other.
So before we move on to the community feedback piece with Mr. Malloy, that was the project background from Ms. Eba. And so we just want to pause for a moment to see if there was any questions that the board may have regarding the information that she shared.
I'm not sure which part then. Are you talking about the community piece or how far, or should we wait?
So Mr. Malloy's, what he's going to talk to us about is what was the information that was shared, and he's going to share with you the themes that he heard that evening. So if there are about suggestions from the community, he's going to touch on that.
Okay. And I do want to go on record as saying that I was a bit disappointed in that exercise because of the number of staff and teachers and employees that were in the room. So I mean, I take it with a grain of salt because the suggestions from the real community people, I do not see recorded. So I just want to say that in the beginning. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anything on what has been presented thus far? Mrs. Patrica.
So I had sent this question to Ms. Schaefer, and I don't know if this is the right time to ask it, but has there been any discussion with the county to enhance that Performing Arts Center to make it more fancy and more available to the community, please?
So I think you know that we have a shared use agreement with the county for the park facilities, and while we haven't specifically reached out to them on that, it has been raised to us as a suggestion and something we definitely will be working with them to see, because one thing we heard very loudly from the community who attended the meeting 2 weeks ago was that they hope that that facility is made available not only to our students but to the public at large, that this kind of facility is much needed in the Lehigh community. And so we will be looking to the county for opportunities for partnerships.
Yeah, I think I read in the newspaper, actually, a quote from someone out there saying they hoped it would be like the Barber B-Man. Now, I don't know that we can do that, but we can certainly give them something where they can have meaningful, good entertainment or whatever you do in an auditorium. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And just to add to that, on that Veterans Park campus, we actually already have a county recreational facility there as well. So there's already some community familiarity in terms of county personnel for that site in that particular area, and a relationship this exists. And the current director of Parks Recreation, Jesse Lavender, was also there while I was there. So there's just a lot of connections that come together for that site.
Great. Thank you.
And I'll come back to you in just a second. Anybody else before Ms. Gittens comments again? Okay, Mrs. Gittens.
You mentioned that you promised the Lehigh community, but for most of the people, since I live out there, most of the people that I spoke with were not even aware of the process of having a performing arts center. The only time that I had heard about it was when I was running for office with Pamela Riviere, and she mentioned that it had been a discussion to do a black box theater. And the discussion was as well with Gateway right down the street having a brand new black box theater. You know, what was the connection there, since we were already going to have a major one at a high school. But most of the community people that I have spoken with and dealt with were not aware of that. So I just, you know, and I'm not downing the project whatsoever, but what I'm saying, it was interesting, Ms. Eba, when you talked about Franklin Park and you made the statement that community engagement is very hard to do once you've got design. And I would just hope that you would look at that in all areas, because the community members that I have been discussing this with and talking to and that have talked to me are not aware of this. And it just seems in your presentation that all decisions are already made. So we basically are just waiting to hear what you guys are already going to do. Because one of the options that was stated was the possibility of having 2 K through 8s and not having one large school. And I did discuss that with the superintendent some time ago, and the statement was, well, we haven't gotten anything in stone yet. But as I look at, when I talked to him and looking at the project now, nothing has changed. You are going forward with the plans that you have. So I just wanted to state that.
So, Ms. Gittens, I think this would be a great time then for us to transition to Mr. Malloy and let him talk a little bit about what he heard that night, and then a good chance for us to continue our dialogue on what he didn't hear that night as well. I could also tell you what we're proposing here today. Those are recommendations that we're sharing with the board today, so I could tell you with 100% certainty that when we get to the end, it's not in stone. These are all going to be recommendations brought forward to the board here today. And so I wanted to share that before we go along any further. And then Mr. Malloy, turn it over to you.
Right before Mr. Malloy speaks, if you don't mind, it struck me that this Performing Arts Center is just calling out for some nice corporation or individual. Have you had any people already reaching out? But it seems like it's perfect for that.
Also a great opportunity for a naming option.
Yeah, that's what I meant, exactly. The naming option, the way we've had in, and I know it's more difficult in Lehigh because some of the more iconic schools like Dunbar and Fort Myers High School and some of those that have many more boosters because they've been around longer, seem to have a much easier time, but it just seems like that this particular building, especially since it would open up perhaps to some community groups and we make a little money renting out the facility, but it just seems like it's crying out for naming rights, and I was curious whether anybody had already kind of.
Well, part of the reason why we're here today is really to ensure that we're on the right track. That's the part of the hard part is you don't go out and ask people for donations if you don't actually have an approved concept.
Well,
so I think now I will say that the Performing Arts Center in this area is not a new conversation. Prior to my being principal, actually prior to Mr. Houchin, all the way back to Lynn Harrell, principal at that site, It was in the capital plan to actually have, an auditorium, a performing arts auditorium, and they even showed me the space, Mr. Houch, I still can remember that, showing me where on the site this will go. And of course, as we know, so often in long-term capital plans, it isn't the money, there isn't the priority necessarily, but the need certainly was there. Now, just to give you a sense of that, North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts, for example, that's a school that's seen a complete transformation by being able to build a real performing auditorium. They're really the class of the entire district. They're truly, when you talk about world class, there's very little that can touch like they can. So I think giving that to Lehigh is just a tremendous opportunity for what's already a tremendous arts program. Certainly the community will hear specifically what the folks who came out had to say about that and why it's so important. But just to also pay some homage to Mr. Santini. Mr. Santini, who was a huge champion for the arts, had actually made some efforts to try to secure from the Kennedy Center some monetary contributions, things along those lines, way back in the day when we talked about this project, back when he was still here. So it's not that there's nothing precluding us from being creative and trying to get commitment and partnerships, but we don't want to get the wagon before the horses or whatnot.
Before the horse, but sometimes people need to start thinking about it and saving their money for doing things like that. So, Mr. Malloy, I'm sorry, go ahead and begin your part of the presentation.
Thank you. So just a report on our community event from March 30th, 2021. This was an event that I thought was extremely well attended by the community, and what was extremely visible was their engagement with the process. And this is really just the lead off as it relates to community engagement in this project. We are by no means in any sort of set in stone or concrete form, but we are continuing to review, analyze, and process all of the community feedback that we receive. So in terms of the options that were presented, we did present a 2 distinct school concept to the community. We also presented an expanded large pre-K to 8 school, and then we left an opportunity on the community input form and also while they were giving their public comments for community concepts and ideas. I did want to speak specifically to the demographics, as that obviously will shape the feedback that we were receiving and processing and analyzing. I also put up a copy of the community input form that was provided. The demographics, there was a large staff presence of Veterans Park, also Lehigh Acres Middle, but not just district employees, but also parents, community members, and well attended by school board members as well. All of the responses, both the public input form and the verbal comments, were analyzed and themed and coded for their frequency so as to ensure that we did not miss anything that was provided by the community. One of the approaches that I thought would be really valuable for our community input events, so I get very excited about anything education and about anything very positive, and I think that this project had just an amazing abundance of potential as it related to the community. And you saw that in terms of how they engaged. And we communicated through all our traditional avenues to try to get people to attend. I would say that in the time of COVID, it was an exceptional amount of participation by the community, and we are no way done with that. One thing that I complimented Principal Carter is when you build a culture that is inviting and welcoming of the community like he has, that is sustainable, and you can continually, down the line, reach back out and continue to involve those stakeholders. And I think that that is amazing. And it trails really nicely off that community partnership school presentation that we heard, because the better the community is connected, the better our schools become. Now, I did want to just, in terms of me kind of being new here, I did want to introduce a framework of content analysis, which I thought could be used in these public events. So not just recollecting what the public said, but also examining the data, coding those units in categories, including specific words or phrases like arts, separate school, expanded, suggestions. The data is then analyzed based on the coded units, and frequency tables are created, summarizing the data based on the frequency in which those comments are made. And I did that with every single input form and every single comment, so as to ensure accuracy from that event. So I'm going to go over some of the collective themes. These were things that were coded for their frequency. There was strong support for expanded school approach or an academy's approach, also opposition to the separate school approach. I would say one of the coded or more frequent terms was a support for an arts program, as Veterans Park is an academy for the arts, yet lacking a sophisticated arts center. There was a number of suggestions for the project, which I will go over, and also a maintaining, thank you. Sorry about that. Ms. Gittens, you got my heart pumping. A maintaining of Veterans Park culture, family, staff through the expanded school concept. So in terms of the concerns were primarily about a loss of the Veterans Park identity, transportation issues related to the logistics with bell times, the ESE program and the continuation of current support for the ESE programs, the capacity and size of the expanded school, and then also the traffic and parking. And lastly, the collective suggestions. These collective suggestions, collective in the sense that they were more frequent, the Academy's approach, the construction of a unique and singular performing arts center, continued support for ESE, a gym, renovated and covered playground, and also keeping the school start and end times. So while I deemed the event a success, I did take a very academic approach into analyzing the feedback. I hope that this is sufficient and maybe sets an example or a model for community events in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. And before we move on to school development, that I go more in depth on the proposed concepts, just wanted to take a pause and give the opportunity for a board to ask questions about the community event itself.
Okay, Mrs. Gittens?
Yes, hold on to your heart, okay? I'm not trying to get you pumped up, but I counted the people that were there, and approximately, I think it was like 70 or so at one point. And I also counted the people that were community that were not staff from either Lambs or Veterans Park, and there was approximately 10 or 12 of the whole group. I know this because I invited people and they showed up and they came up and spoke to me. I just think it's a bit, I can't even think of the word for it, to base community feedback on not a true community event.
But don't we always talk about the school as a community in itself?
I understand that, but the only thing is, and I'm not going to argue with you guys about it. Like I said, I know the plan is set, and it's going to happen as I've been told.
I don't believe the plan is set, though.
Anyway.
But I know, but you saying that the plan is set, it shifts the entire process of what we're presenting.
Well, and I'm not trying to put you down. I'm just saying the fact that I saw when I was there. One of the suggestions that a couple of people talked about was the opportunity to have two separate schools. And when I look back, I reviewed this document for today, and in more than one place on the document, you have concepts. And the concept one is two separate schools, but as a pre-K through 5 and a middle 6 through 8, or one large pre-K. So trust me, I know I am the minority in this room right now with all of this suggestion. And I just think that to hear some of the comments that the community says, I know the staff is a part of the community, but a large part of that staff does not live in that community. And I know community individuals that are involved with the community that know nothing about it, that were not invited, we didn't reach out to them and say, this organization, and I know we advertised, I get all that. I am just letting you know how I really feel about this whole deal and this whole process.
Well, certainly, if the suggestion was made for two separate K-8s, then they would have been coded as such, and they would have been in the frequency tables. There was one suggestion that made the separate K-8, and I did record that, but it was not a collective suggestion, as it was not more than once.
So
okay, so let's keep this to
And again, I'm being cut off, but that's okay.
I'm only moving
That's
things
okay.
ahead because,
That's
actually for both parties, because it's not appropriate at this point to have a debate. I think it's.
I didn't think I was having a debate. I was stating my
Okay,
thoughts.
I'm going to call it and move it along to other points. Anybody else have a suggestion at this point? And I think that, yeah, Mrs. Jordan.
I was just going to say, I was there. I don't know if I was invited or not, but I did come to the meeting, as many were there. I mean, the place was full, which I thought was a great representation, and it looked good to see so many people there. And the fluid conversation was there, which I loved, because everyone had an opportunity to speak, and they were heard. So I think that, and I did hear one person, as you mentioned, Mr. Malloy, mention that about the schools. And I'm sure Mr. Carter also has a lot of communications with the families that are there. And I did see the passion of the art teacher, who was so passionate about the cost and everything that they go through anytime they want to have a show. I mean, in depth, he shared that with all of us. And I saw how the families were speaking about how they love the fact of how this is a family, and how that we keep our families together and going one place. So I really took a lot out of that, and I thought it was great communication. So thank you for that.
Mrs. Morgan?
So just following along on that comment, I was also there, and I do want to compliment you, Mr. Malloy, because I thought you standing there, recording comments as they were coming in, asking people to provide written comments. As Ms. Jordan said, there was a lot of conversation, very fluid. I think you have touched on a great beginning to how we model community forums going forward. So I just wanted to compliment all of you, who I know you were there also, Kathy, but I thought it was a terrific forum, and I think it's a great model. So there you go.
Anybody else have a comment? I just want to comment that I'm not trying to cut anyone off, but just in the interest of time, we have obviously different sets of opinion here. And the other thing is, I think we can all agree that even with a decent or moderate turnout, however you want to measure it, it's one of the things that we need to continue to work on, because it's been my experience that for many of these forums, when I was campaigning, I used to call them the recycled people. And we do tend to have a lot of the same people with perhaps certain agendas or whatever show up, and that's fine. But I think the thing that, as a school district, and this is your area, that we need to continue to work on, is to bring out more people and continue to find more ways to get the word out to everyone. So what's the next step in this presentation?
So thank you very much, Ms. Vaughn. So the next part of the presentation will be from school development. They're going to go a little bit deeper into the concepts that were presented that night, just so that everyone has a firm understanding. So at this time, Dr. Denise Carlin and Linda Mayer.
And I'll begin, and I'm going to echo what Adam Malloy previously shared, that we did go with two concepts that night. We went with, the first concept was two distinct schools, and these two distinct schools were a pre-K to 5 and a middle school 6 to 8. Opening a new school, like a middle school we talked about previously, high schools, they have to fill up. It takes a few years to get that culture in the building and to fill up. And so we thought concept one was a good option with our pre-K to 5 and our middle school 6 to 8. It would be in the former Lambs building. We went, really, I honestly believed in my heart that night when we went and did the presentation, that's what the families were going to want. If you heard from the students in the back, the 2 students, they want that middle school feel, but that's not what we heard echoed from the other members that night. So the second concept we went in with was the pre-K to 8, and it being a really large school, and I thought, they're not going to be interested in that. And that was really my heart, that's not going to be. But there was some parent in there, I'm not sure if it was a staff member, that they brought up the word academies. And if you were there, and there were 4 of you there, it erupted. That was the loudest applause of the night. And I had to step back and say, okay, we were going in thinking, or I was going in, I'm going to tell you, Ms. Giddens, with my mindset to pretty much concept 1. That fills in, that takes care of capacity, it's manageable, we have the staff for that. I had to back up, and that word academies that entire night kept running in my head. And I kept saying, what are they talking about? Academies. And so I got with Shanna, and I asked a couple other people, what are they referring to? And so that's our second concept up there now, is we did listen that night to the community and to the applause and to the feedback from the people there, and they want academies within this school. And that third concept came out of we had 3 options that night, and was community ideals and concepts, and it completely shifted our thought. And I'm just being very forthcoming with this information. So I want you to know that. Our commonalities with both, regardless, again, of what the board decides, there is not a decision. Whatever the school district decides to do, it's completely okay either way, because this campus is going to be great either way. And the reason it is because we are going to carry on that VPAA character, VPAA brand. And I got what that really meant that night when several of the parents echoed loudly that it's a privilege and an honor to be selected to go there. Those were the words they used, and I wrote them down. Privilege and honor to get that as your first choice, because you're there from preschool possibly to grade 8. So that just spoke volumes to me. It was shared with me that night that they wanted a Barbara B. Mann. So several people that walked up to me, not sure if they were staff members or community members there. I don't know the difference between, they didn't identify that way, but they did come up and they want a large center. So I know that's something that they're passionate about out there, and I know some of the other principals have already said it'd be great because it is difficult. If you heard the presentation from the arts teacher out there, if you were there, it was a long letter, several pages long, and he identified you can't pick the little girl, you can't pick each other up in lifts and ballet because the ceiling on the stage was too low and they bumped their heads. And he had one story after the other, and what the cost was additional to perform is to be transported. It cost them an additional like $5,000 to go use a high school facility and get the kids there and back, and just not having that easy access. So having a performing arts center was a very prominent thing for them. I did have several parents come to me, and I say, you know, we want a balance of this, so we want to make sure our ESE students still have that family feel. And so there were some that came up to me, and I know they were parents because they told me what class their child was in and wanted to make sure that teacher was there for them. So we want to consider those things. One of the biggest things that parents wanted was that picking up their child and dropping them off at the same time. So that's a consideration. I can't say that would, you know, we can do that for sure, but it is a strong consideration for bell times and transportation. And another thing that was shared was that regardless of which one of these or another one that is selected, if it is the two separate schools or if it's one large school, we will guarantee them something we are going to, as a district, promise that we will make sure that they have the enrollment option, if they want to stay with that school all the way through. So regardless of which one, we have discussed that and agreed we'll make that happen, that they have that option. So from there, I'll turn it over to Denise.
That's great, thank you. So as we've talked about, so all of that feedback was gathered. We came together as a team. Like Ms. Eba said, this has been, operations working, academic services working together, coupled with the community input. And we had a couple of conversations. We said, okay, one, we can go with a distinct and separate schools. So an elementary school, a middle school, kind of united by that performing arts center. So what that would look like would be separate administrations. So you'd have a principal and assistant principal on one site, same on the other site, separate budgets, separate core facilities, daily operations happening on, the current VPA site and the current, or the former LAM site. So that is one consideration that we talked about. Okay, if we can move forward. And I'm going to have us go one more slide forward because this shows a really good visual. The other concept, as Ms. Mayer just talked about when the community started mentioning like academies. So we said, okay, well, what could that look like? So based on the feedback that Mr. Malloy provided our team, we sat down and we said, okay, so I think what they're talking about here is kind of the visual that you see. The early childhood approach, so that pre-K through 3 approach, the 4 through 6, kind of that intermediate child approach, and then the last academy to be a 7-8, so kind of that middle school concept, right? And so when you think about that, that's really built around developmental needs of children, okay? So, and the other positive about this one is that it also helps us look at how do we take a very large school and break it down so there's a manageable number of students and staff. Okay, so that was an important consideration as we had conversation. If we can flip back to that other slide, sorry, Dr. Spiro, I do want to use that slide, if we could, just stay there for a moment. The other consideration was there would still be a principal over the entire pre-K through 8 school. However, we would utilize our model of an associate principal over each one of those clusters. So you would have an associate principal working with our early childhood students and early elementary students, a 4 through 6 associate principal, and then a 7 through 8 associate principal with assistant principals supporting that. And when we talked about that, if you think about the 2 separate and distinct schools, being the former Lambs as well as the Veterans Park current facility, it would require no new administrators. We would just restructure that configuration. The other benefit is there would be one budget kind of overseen by one principal. So there would be that united approach. One other thing we talked about was the shared facilities. So if you've been on Veterans Park site, you see that the pre-K through 8 currently shares facilities, cafeteria, those types of facilities. And so when we look at the Performing Arts Center, that would be a shared facility because we would unite them under the arts brand. So that would be a uniter. The other nice thing about this model is that it encourages grade level articulation. So having been a principal but at the elementary and then an administrator at the secondary level, I can tell you sometimes that's difficult. Elementary teachers, unless you intentionally set up that articulation with another middle school, it doesn't naturally happen. In this pre-K through 8 model, there would be the opportunity for those grade level articulations to happen, which would be beneficial for children. We know that when children move from one level to the next, always fantastic for the teacher to be able to talk to the next grade level. Well, that would be a fellow colleague on the faculty. So that's another attractor for this, in our opinion. And then as Ms. Mayer mentioned, that seamless progression from pre-K through 8 so that children are not having those interruptions to their progress, like we talked about when we presented the research. There's a lot of research that says children going from that 5th grade to 6th grade hit that bump. Well, if you look in the 4 through 6 model, that doesn't happen, and we also have one faculty working, having that consistent conversation across all of those 9 levels, so to speak. So for that reason, one more slide, please. We are bringing forward our recommendation as a team for the pre-K through 8 academies. And again, like Mrs. Mayer said, this was not something originally we thought about based on the conversation at the forum, based on our conversation as a collective team. We're bringing this as a recommendation, not a done deal, but a recommendation to you for your consideration and conversation.
So, Ms. Vaughn, we'll hit pause there and allow some conversation around the recommendation that was brought here today, and then Ms. Eba will talk about next steps, and that'll be our last component.
Okay, let's talk about, and I'm just going to go down the line. Ms. Morgan, begin, please.
Well, I just want to stand up and dance. Thank you. I mean, that's why you invite the community. That's, all of that cross-fertilization of ideas and whatever. I think this is brilliant. I really do. I think that gives you exactly what you want, a community invested in that cluster of schools. It's great for kids. As you said, it's great for the staff. What you're proposing is great for the community. I love it. I don't have any questions. I just think you've turned something that has been very uncertain into a very clear, positive on several levels. So, thank you.
Mrs. Gittens? I'm just
One
going
of
to
the
go down the
questions,
row.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go down the row.
One of the questions that I received about the Academy's concept is location and transportation. And when you look at that slide 20 with the 3 separate groups, and then you go down to the very last slide, I've had parents ask me about transportation. If I have a second grader and I have a 5th grader and I have an 8th grader, are they going to be dropped off at one place and have to walk all the way across campus? And then how is that going to affect the traffic flow?
So one of the reasons that the architect and the CM that were selected was because the architect specifically actually brought to the table some different ways that we can deal with transportation. This is a really good question, and it is something that we heard at the meeting. We've heard, Adam and I had previously met with the principal and his staff on a Zoom call. There were questions about that. Then we have heard, Adam has heard it in the meetings that he's done in the public about this project. So we know that transportation and the bell times is one of the most important facility questions that we're going to have to address. It is something that we will be doing through the design phase. But again, the reason, or at least one of the reasons that we picked the team that we picked is because this particular architect brought different ideas to the table. We do have some opportunities, some abilities to do things. Recently, I was out with David Newland on the site to look at our existing transportation problems. We have, as you may be aware, we have existing transportation problems, especially at Lambs, where we come into a neighborhood street and we have very tight turnaround space. So we know we have to address that. How we're going to do that, to be honest, I don't have an answer for you today, but I can assure you that it will be one of the critical items that we evaluate and consider as we move through the design process and as we engage the community in our continued design efforts. We will have a discussion about what is the best way to address that issue.
And may I ask a second question?
Sure.
The other question is, I was speaking to someone that's a builder and an engineer, and they were discussing the current Lambs building is, I think, 1980 something. It's a very old building. And once you make any changes in a building that old, then you have to bring everything up to code. So at the meeting, I remember Mr. Savage, when it was discussed about having a separate, and he said that it would be too expensive to do that. How are we looking at upgrading that building anyway? Because once you start something, you've got to upgrade everything by code. That's just the way the code goes. So even if it's not a separate school, if you're going to be using it for some portion of the academies, it still needs to be upgraded. And how are we doing that?
We agree with you. This campus, Lambs, does need to be upgraded. It is the reason that, as we discussed early in the presentation, that these were items that we had already identified. When we originally budgeted this project, we budgeted it at about $5 million. We knew and know that that project budget thank you, that project budget was too low. We are going to be asking in this capital budget to add an additional $15 to $25 million, so up to $30 million project. And a lot of that money is for the original Lambs campus. There are some work that obviously we'll be putting in a new performing arts center. That's a $10 to $15 million estimated project cost. And there's some work that we will do at the existing veterans. But a lot of that money is to bring up Lambs, the original Lambs, to a standard that meets the entire campus with branding, with maintenance. There's a lot of work we're going to be doing on that campus.
And my last question has to do with the existing overcrowding. In our most overcrowded section is middle schools in the East Zone. And how will this project, one, how will it change and help that? And also, because the existing new MM is not really, at this point until a couple of years out, going to help with that situation. So we're basically looking at still keeping kids for quite a while still in portables.
The reason, I'm sorry.
Well, my main thing is, how will this affect our numbers in all the other middle schools? We need to be looking big picture and saying, in this section, we've got this many middle schools and they're overcrowded by this amount, and how will this project adjust that?
Kathy, if I may, just
Yes, please.
I want to hit, there are three questions asked. I just want to make sure we hit all three of them. First was just about transportation, the infrastructure. While we certainly don't have a final design yet, the good fortune of having two adjacent sites like that, as well as the complementary infrastructure of the county area and the park that's adjacent to it, gives you, by combining those sites, a substantial additional footprint to work with. So a lot more adjustment of the internal road traffic. A good example of that was when I was principal at Veterans Park. One of the things we did was open up a second office. This allowed us to take a parent drop-off in the morning from an hour and 15 minutes to about 30 minutes, and that was without changing the roadways at all, just by realizing more efficiencies of the existing infrastructure. So that'll be a priority in that plan. Just to jump kind of to the final piece and how significant relative to the capacity and so forth, by opening up middle school MM, the new Lambs, at full capacity, essentially, we are helping our overall facility in terms of our capacity and our utilization numbers. Now, it doesn't take all of our portables out, but that's something that, as we've stated before, we're looking forward to addressing the 10-year capital plan so everyone can understand when are the last portables coming out of every individual school, because it's so important, and we certainly have is prioritized. Constructing a new school is a multi-year process. It's not something we just do overnight, and clearly there's a lot of construction occurring out in that zone already, and we have a lot planned, but part of it is what's complicated this issue is our proximity plan. Knowing that we're moving and changing our boundaries also has an impact on that, where the students actually live, where they currently attend. It's a major transition. So the portables have been a valuable additional piece for us so that we don't have to overnight disrupt all of our schools in a way that kind of shows poor planning. So what we're really trying to do is make sure our capital plan is the most effective that it can be. We look forward to presenting that information as well. This, of course, a critical piece of that plan. As you note here on this slide, we have a range of this capacity that's listed here, anywhere from 2,200 to 2,700. As we go through the ability of repurposing this facility, that will require some adjustment to our fish capacity as we change room utilization. Good example of that would be like at James Stevens, for example. When we switched that from a K-8 to an elementary school, the student capacity charged to that junior high gymnasium was removed. So no longer were we responsible to bring junior high students onto that site, because at an elementary school that no longer carried that fish capacity. So that changes your utilization, what was an underutilized campus. So there's just a lot to this piece. We look forward to sharing that in the 10-year capital plan and show you when all the portables are coming out of every single individual school, so that we can say really confidently that we're getting enough schools built to remove our temporary but very valuable to us relocatables, and then free them up for the construction that we have happening in some of these other zones as well, where they will be needed. I hope that addresses some of those questions. Was there anything else that I missed on there, Ms. Gittens?
No, it does. It brings to mind my thought, though, that you look at capital plan and proximity and which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And I don't know if we've looked at that because we're just trying to do it all at the same time. And from what you just said, it begs the question of, do we not get our capital in place and our plans in place before we talk about proximity? And that's nothing new from what I've said before. So thank you for answering my question.
Absolutely. Yes, they're revised every year. To answer that question, the capital plan, the 10-year plan for us is revised each year. It's part of our budget process. And the intention is so that we do clearly communicate. And as we said before, as I mentioned in the auditorium that we're talking about, there are things that get portrayed in a plan that then get removed. Another part of the reason we try to communicate that is through the CIP. The CIP helps us kind of show how all these limited capital dollars have to go to cover maintenance costs, technology costs, all the different things we do with new construction. Our public-facing CIP is how we also communicate those things to the board and to the public and so forth. So I hope that helps.
Dr. Savage, one of the things you shared with me recently, and I believe I might have mentioned it yesterday, but the proximity plan and being able to design schools in an integrated fashion with it actually allows us to realize, I think, more efficiency in how we do utilize capacity district-wide, so that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do without it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really important statement. The proximity plan, the current way we do our assignments in our subzones, certainly meets the need from a capacity standpoint, but isn't really very efficient. We transport students all over the district, and it's not the most efficient thing. This proximity plan, and certainly we couldn't have jumped ahead of that process. That process unfolds as it does, very data-driven. We've already realized some tremendous opportunities to where we even locate new buildings. All those things are actually even more efficient because we've gone through the proximity effort. So a credit to the leadership, prioritizing a proximity plan.
Okay, Ms.
Thank you.
Jordan, do you have any questions?
Nope, I just thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the hard work. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
I just want to thank you also, and I'm excited about maintaining the arts. I know that is something that keeps kids in schools, and I think that this will really help families who have multiple kids, and I'm excited to see the progress.
Okay. Mrs. Patrica?
I have one question, and then I have several comments. And this is going to sound like a stupid question to you, educator. People who know education when I don't. Why pre-K through 3, 4 through 6, and 7 through 8? It seems to me the third graders who are tested would be better, and plus then it's 4, 4, and 2. You understand my question?
I do. I absolutely do. So when you look at the research, early childhood is really pre-K through 3. Okay. When we do it the right way, and so because of traditional models, so this gives us a chance to step out of that traditional model and really adhere to what the research says around early childhood.
Okay, that totally makes sense.
Yes.
And I will say, the email that I sent to Ms. Schaefer was, this presentation is even better than the last one. I finally get it. I finally understand it. We have been talking about LAMS and moving it, and the excitement of Dr. Gibson out there about being able to get into that campus and increase his selectivity or selection rate or whatever you call that. Is palpable, but I finally see how it all fits together. I have been sitting here listening to the conversations taking place at the table and not really understanding it all, but trusting you and trusting the process and knowing that you would bring forth something that I could really get excited about and really get behind, and that is exactly what you have done. Ms. Mayor, you know what it is to be in that building. I mean, it's not in Lehigh, it was in Bonita, but to have a stage where kids can't really do whatever it is that they do on stage. So I would think that those comments would have hit you particularly hard while you were out there. Those transportation questions are I'm going to be from Massachusetts right now. They're wicked hard to address right now because we're so early in the process. But I think that you've shown at the Three Oaks location that as more information comes in, you shift and you move and you change in order to meet the needs of the community and whatever the transportation issues are. I could not believe, Mr. Malloy, that you actually provided a scientific analysis of community input. I mean, that's what you did. When I first joined this board, I remember Dr. Pruitt taking like a scientific approach to human resources and bringing us data and showing us how the data was analyzed. And for you to sit here and do that today was just, I was really, really impressed. And the last statement isn't really very productive other than to say that the gears, you know, slide. I think that might have been a snapshot of Dr. Savage's brain. Except the gears move really fast most of the time. You have my complete support. Thank you so much for this. I feel really good after this presentation. I appreciate it.
Okay, Mrs. Giovanelli.
Thank you. So I attended that same meeting, and I heard everything was family. I mean, it's just what everyone, parents, including the staff. I mean, they just, so that was what I left with, is that it was family. So I think continuing that concept is what the community wants. And I know parents like the mentioning of, they drop their first grader off and then they drop their fifth grader off, or their seventh grader. So they're all in the same school. People like that. They can plan better with even daycare and vacations. So I like the concept. I was curious. I haven't really seen, like, what does the data say? Because we don't have a lot of schools that are K through 8. And so I see it as something great, and I'm hearing that it's great, but we don't have a lot of that, so, going on. So what's the data say? What does the data tell us? I mean, what is our need out there in Eastleigh area, in the East area zone? Because, I mean, that's the other thing, we've got to accommodate the need, and we've been struggling with that. So that would be, what I would ask, is that information, because I really didn't see any of that information, like what's that plan and the growth. And this is all part of the proximity, and I know that's going on too in the background, but, what's our need?
Ms. Giovanelli, I want to make sure that we understand your question. So when you talk about data, are you talking about specifically about academic data? Are you talking about proximity data?
Both, actually, because, like, do students and children do better in the K through 8, And, I mean, I think stability always children do better in, so I see this as being stability, truthfully, but I'm not the educator, so you're the expert, so I'm asking that.
For sure.
And then the data regarding growth, and do we need a middle school, or do we need elementary schools, or do we need both? I mean, I know we need, but what's where's the need the strongest at this point in time, and when this is finished,
So I'll take the academic question, and then I'm going to defer to colleagues on the proximity question.
Thank you.
So we were really honored to bring a presentation forward to the board, I think it was about a month ago, if I'm correct, looking at the data relative to the K-8 configuration. And you may recall from the presentation that the data were mixed. We certainly had larger cities, some urban areas that showed some real promise as it pertains to the lack of transition from, for example, 5th grade to 6th grade. So we saw students doing better. There was also the opposite research. So the research around K-8s is somewhat mixed. As you mentioned, the feeling of family, the feeling of stability, the connections with teachers, the relationships on the affective side of education seem to be more favorable at a pre-K through 8 for all of those reasons that you articulated. But we do have to be honest, and that was something we admitted readily when we brought that research forward, that there were some pluses and minuses.
Yeah,
so
I actually liked that presentation a lot, so yes.
Thank you. So that's the academic side, and I'll defer to colleagues on the proximity.
The answer is, in terms of demand, as Dr. Savage showed, it's one of the cogs, and we are here supporting this because we think that with a capacity of 2,200 to 2,700, we're going to fill the need as part of the puzzle. It's not the answer. There's lots of answers. As you know, we are doing quite a bit of growth and development in this area so that we can collectively and comprehensively address the needs of the Lehigh growing area. And it's not just one piece, it's going to be all of it together. But this certainly provides for a necessary piece that is going to be very well supported by the Lehigh community.
Yeah, just to kind of bring those two pieces together, because it isn't just one or the other, it is both. It's so important when we talk about the research related to K-8s versus middles and so forth. What they really find is having folks work together across that gap where children are moving developmentally from a adult-centric place to a peer-centric place. as they move into puberty and so forth. It's such a difficult age for children. And so having that continuity where they know the people, where the teachers are working together, where they, fifth grade teachers and sixth grade teachers work together, understand what standards were covered educationally, know the child, can speak to the child's difficulties. That can only help children when they have that linkage. You don't necessarily have to do a K to do that. For schools where there's well-developed feeder pipelines, say like in a non-choice environment where 2 or 3 elementary schools feed into the same middle school. It's not uncommon to find districts somewhere in the country where those teachers work and collaborate so that there is that continuity, so that the teachers in the middle school, and then same from middle to high. So it's really about that, trying to address those gaps where kids can fall through the cracks is so important. As we know, Dave's very clear on 9th grade, same thing. It's really those same pieces. But from a capacity standpoint, it's so important that people understand we're going to use every bit of space we have in our district. All of our permanent space is extremely valuable to us. But if we can do it intelligently and set this school up for a strong foundation, not just now, but for the next 50 years or more, so important that we do that, that we give this school, when we go through this effort, and we're going to expend dollars, that we do it as intelligently, strategically as we possibly can. So that's why you see a range, because while we certainly are aware, and Ms. Gittens is 100% right about the middle school overage, that middle school is critically a vast need out in that zone. But if you were to talk to the elementary school principals, they will tell you those class sizes are awfully crowded out in the East Zone as well. That's why we have Elementary J. It's very important that we have this, we look at capacity for the entirety. I mean, you can see Gateway High being highly selected and utilized out there. So really that whole zone with such a tremendously high growth rate and such an evident population is already there is our #1 challenge in the district, and we continue to work through that. So this will be a critical piece of it. So I hope that answers that question as well.
Yes, thank you
My
very
pleasure.
much. I support it.
To kind of wrap this portion up, and then we'll have final questions. I wanted to comment on this concept #2 and what Dr. Savage just said. Sorry, but I'm traveling back 30 years ago or more to what I was used to in Texas, where we had the feeder schools. I personally, as a department chair in a high school, did vertical teaming, vertical planning with our feeder middle schools. It's terrific. It's something that I was disappointed in when I came to Lee County to see how this county was set up many years ago. So I think we're finally moving into the end of the 20th century. Anyway, I know it's because of other issues in the South that we didn't have. The other thing is that might help with a couple of the questions that were asked is if you look at pre-K through 3, and actually I just touched on this in my op-ed, the children at this age are learning to read. When you get to 4th grade, they are reading to learn. You take a look at 6th graders, and my own children, when they were growing up in our neighborhood in Texas, their elementary, there was one that actually had this model without the pre-K. But there was another one in our neighborhood where 6th graders were in the elementary school. And through my long, unfortunate experience teaching a year and a half of middle school, 6th graders are babies. They're still babies. I mean, the girls are a little more grown up, but you throw them in a middle school, I think it's more appropriate that 4th, 5th, 6th, they kind of, that's, it says aligned to child development. And from what I know, that's absolutely true. And then 7, 8, and I've actually even seen the old junior high model of 7, 8, 9, because freshmen are another group that I don't choose to teach. They're kind of babies as well. But anyway, that said, hopefully that, for those of you who aren't educators, that helps in a very succinct, simplified way of why this is a good concept, and I think it's a perfect concept when we have pre-existing schools that are so close to one another, that it just makes sense to have these. So if I were planning this, and I know I've mentioned it before, I really like this model, and I think it's something that moving forward, we're going to see perhaps as we have to build some other new schools that might work for us. So we do, everybody's had an opportunity. I'm going to come back to final questions, but we have, what's the final thing, the next steps, or what is it that you need from us? And then I'll call on some final questions and comments before we vote.
We've reviewed this slide in pieces, but just to reiterate it, our current proposed budget for the LAMS project, the original LAMS project, was about $5 million. We're going to need to increase that budget by an additional $15 to $25 million, so about a $30 million project is what we would be looking at as a total. Now, remember, some of that is because in the existing capital plan, we had the Performing Arts Center planned for but not budgeted out. In later years, we would bring that forward, but we would also be upgrading the budget to improve, as Ms. Gittens talked about, being able to do some more extensive improvements, especially on the original LAMS campus. So we would be looking at a total project budget of around $30 million for this effort. You would see that in your next capital plan that we'll be bringing forward to you later in the spring and into the summer. The next phase would be the design phase. As you know, we've already selected our architect, our construction manager, and our building official. With your permission, now we would be able to move forward into the negotiation phase. We didn't want to get into negotiations till we really understood what the project was going to be. So we would be doing the facility design. We do a master plan like we're doing at other projects like this, like Riverdale, where it's not as cut and dry a project. We really need to understand the project, and we need a design professional who can help us understand the project better. So the capacity, as Dr. Savage talked about, we would be looking at a 2,200 to a 2,700 capacity that we would identify and work through as we go through that design phase. And then we'd move into construction. And then while we're working on our designing and constructing the facility, our academic partners would be working on the programming for the school and the leadership structure of the school.
Okay.
All while we have an active campus.
Is there anything that you need from us today? In terms of consensus, it doesn't look like it.
We were looking for consensus that our recommended option is the one that you are supporting, so that we can move forward with this effort.
Okay, I'm going to kind of guess that that's going to be premature, but I'll leave it to the board. Final questions, comments. Mrs. Gittens had something to say.
Just a couple of things. When I first discussed this with different people on the staff and all, I just want to make sure that it's on record. I am not against the project. I think I have voiced what my concerns were and are. And initially, I actually liked the idea of having a K-8 for the same reasons that you mentioned, having this breakout. And the reasons being that the family approach, that if you, the demographic in the East Zone is very much family oriented. Most families have more than 2 children. And so the concept of family is very, very important, which is why when, we were discussing the possible K-8, that a child would be able to, and a family would be able to do just what you're saying, grow up with that same staff. And you're saying that here with this concept, which is good, because I've taught in all these levels, and I totally agree that pre-K through 3 is really good together. 4 through 6, and I said that when I taught middle school. These 6th grade babies need to still be back, in the nest. And then 7th and 8th, that's a good concept. My vision of it was, though, that 7th grader that's having a difficult time still has that 3rd grade teacher that was hers when she was in third grade. And to be able to go and speak with that teacher to get over this hump of whatever she's going through emotionally is important to her, and she's there. And that was my idea of the K through 8. If it's spread out across the campus, is that still possible? Is that, you're saying the family approach, but you're talking about close to 3,000 students spread out over a broad aspect. And to walk from one end of that campus to the other end kind of takes away that family closeness that I can talk to Ms. Smith if I need to.
Just to comment on that, I was a principal there for 3 years, and one of the benefits was that teachers even got a chance to move across those levels. So that third grade teacher actually became a seventh grade teacher. Often it was the most transfer I had was into sixth grade, because you could teach sixth grade with the elementary ed certification. So oftentimes we did get a chance to see teachers who really thought, I could never do middle school, and they found it was great. I think strategically there's a lot of different things you can do to adjust that. I think Mr. Carter's here as well. He's obviously has a really strong vision of one school, one really common school. So even if it were to go up in size, that's also the importance of the associate principal concept, keeping one key leader over the entire site while still allowing the developmental clusters to really respect and honor that child's development. I didn't know if it'd be appropriate.
And
Mr.
can I
Carter?
ask, can I ask one thing, though?
Yes,
Are
absolutely.
you looking at using a looping concept?
Well, so that's
And
just,
how many
I don't want to speak
grades
for him, but we did that, and it was extremely effective to exactly your point. I had second grade teachers loop into third grade, and then they'd loop back down again. So it was really a 2-year commitment. It was good for the kids and the teachers. The teachers gained clarity of what the next grade level really demanded and brought that information back. We did it with first grade and kindergarten, a number of those looping concepts. We also did it with fifth grade and sixth grade. So you had teachers who really benefited from that understanding, and then you gave the additional continuity for the students that they had that person they recognized. By keeping it as one campus instead of 2 separate campuses, you would have one staff. So while you would have those associate principals, under the leadership of one master principal who's really guiding that, it does give you those opportunities for some unique things. But I don't want to speak too much for Mr. Carter, because this is his show now.
Right.
And he
can
hasn't
I
had a chance to speak to us on this as well.
And can I just say one thing, too? And I don't know if it's even done, Dr. Carlin, if you maybe know. Somehow looping 6th and 7th grade might be an absolutely awesome thing to do, to keep that 6th grade, baby into the higher level of 7th grade and kind of spoon feeding them into middle school.
And I can answer that just real quickly, Mrs. Gittens, that the issue with that becomes, and I'm 100% in agreement with you, is if you have certified teachers, because the elementary
Right.
certification goes,
To 6th grade.
through 6th grade, but
Right.
then they have to be subject area certified to teach 7th.
Right.
So,
And if
but
you
what
do
we-
have them, yes,
right,
that
and,
would be.
and Denise and I, her elementary and my middle school that we support out there now, BPAA, so we could work with Ed and looking at maybe some of our fragile students that we know need that looping. Maybe they're with a group of teachers on like a team almost approach, and they do loop with their teachers. So that's, even if it's not the entire school, the whole entire 6th and 7th grade, we could do it in a small
Well, and the
group.
vulnerable ones, because you mentioned, as we mentioned before, going from elementary to middle, there's always that drop. So if there were some type of an academic looping for the fragile students, that could help them be achieving in middle school.
Coach?
Okay, and welcome, and hopefully, is there anybody else that has anything? We were doing really well on time, but now we are way behind. Yes.
So just a quick question. You did mention that you're going to be pulling $15 to $25 million for this project. You're bringing something forward from further out in the capital projections. What is it that will be pushed back?
So that is a good question, and one we had today among staff. We were starting to talk about that. So we will definitely be bringing that forward. And again, I want to make it clear that this is an additional 15 to 25 million, so we're looking at a $30 million project.
Yes, I understand.
We will be discussing with you what does that mean in terms of the overall budget and the overall capital plan.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to Madam Chair and our school board members and Superintendent Dr. Atkins. And I'm excited about this opportunity. And so I'm speaking to you today as principal of Veterans Park Academy for the Arts, but I'm also speaking in reference to all of our stakeholders. We are so excited for this opportunity. And first of all, let me give you a little bit of background knowledge about Ed Carter. I'm so excited for the Lambs family as well. As a former administrator of Lambs community, I'm excited for them to have this opportunity for a brand new building and to have a fresh start. And so I'm excited for Dr. Gibson and his staff. But I'm also eagerly excited for the Veterans Park community. Because when you look at this area and you look at Veterans Park, and I'm talking about the park, Parks and Rec, and you look at the rich tradition of Veterans Park Academy for the Arts, and now we're being afforded with this extra space to really grow and plant the seed with our pre-K students as they grow into adolescence, and then as they're continuing to move on to high school, we get to really shape our students to be productive citizens in this community. And when I came in December, I came in with a fresh lens. And when I came in, I really got a chance to understand the true sentiments of Veteran Parks Academy for the Arts. Many former administrators, many community members have reached out to me to really share their wisdom and what they would like to see with our community. When we brought up the opportunity for a Center of the Arts, and I'm going to say Academy for the Arts, you should have seen the excitement in the air. Through my endeavors as an administrator, I worked at Cypress Lake High School when there was only one art school within this community. And that's what we brought up, and that's what we shared with our stakeholders. And so what we are excited about is having the opportunity to really bring something special to the Lehigh community. And so right now, as we're planning right now what that vision will look like, we know that right now we want to mirror the success that Norfolk Myers Academy of the Arts has had for many years. And that's the goal that we want to achieve. Now, what I can share with you, and Ms. Ebal can share this as well, when we had our preliminary discussions, our goal is to be the premier K-8 arts program in Southwest Florida. And that's what we shared with her. We shared with what we want to have is an A-grade Center of the Arts for not only all stakeholders of Veterans Park community, but also the community within itself. And so we are excited for this opportunity. Now, I do know at the beginning there was some apprehension of how would that look like. And many of our staff members, stakeholders, even students had some concerns. But it was brought all together with an amazing community forum. And as Ms. Mayer stated earlier, the academies came from the community. It came from one of our teachers that all of her students have gone through the ranks of being a kindergarten at Veterans Park, on to high school and adulthood. And when the academy came up, as she stated earlier, everyone had a smile on their face. And so after the community forum, we have received many accolades for a successful event. Many stakeholders have reached out to us. Students have came up to really express their sentiments of they're excited to what it can really become. So our motto right now is Veterans Park Academy for the Arts is a good school. It's been a good school for some time. Our goal is to have it become a great school. And we think with this plan that we have in place, well, not in place yet, but a recommendation, it can take us where we want to be. And it's truly going to make Veterans Park Academy for the Arts a pillar of the community.
Okay. Thank you. And in the interest of time, we really do need to move on. So what you need from us, if you would repeat it, and then I'm going to ask for the consensus. Would you repeat it exactly?
What we are asking for is, based on Principal Carter's great description. We would like your support in us moving forward with the direction to proceed with Concept 2, which is a pre-K to 8 academies program for Veterans Park.
Okay, so there's the consensus item. If you would all please indicate your feeling on it. So I can't tell, that's the, all right, so we have 1 can live with it and 6, so it passes. 1 can live with it and 6, yes.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I would love to get us done by 5 o'clock. Do we have anybody, any cards, anybody in the audience that's going to speak?
Miss Jerry Ware was here, and she did fill out a card, but I don't see her in the audience anymore.
See her anymore.
She left.
Okay, so seeing none, and I know Miss Morgan has a pending phone call, so I'm going to call on her first, and let's finish this baby by 5 o'clock so we can all eat dinner.
Okay, I'm going to split my comments into 2. I'll share half tonight. Just want to congratulate Fort Myers Technical College on their audit, which had no findings. I want to compliment planning and PR staff for handling of meetings with Estero and Lehigh residents regarding coming changes to their schools in the districts. I also want to thank, talking about communications, Pam McKay, because I think she has done a really nice job writing for the news press and providing information to the broader community about some of the challenges, transformations, choices that are being made in the school district as we move forward. I want you to know that there is a set of questions for the 2021 Q2 Lee Executive Business Climate Survey, which focuses on the impact of access to school and early child care facilities, on employability and availability of employees during the pandemic. The survey is set to go out April 12th, 2021. I hope this is the beginning of some more surveys on early childhood need in the Lee County community, but focused on generating business, getting business people to think about early childhood and how it affects our economic growth and diversity. Want to compliment Human Resources on their Grow the Own scholarships. I do want to say, well, let me save that one for the end. Sales tax, I'm going to save that for tonight too. Okay, save that for tonight. Just want to compliment, what is her name? Graduation, what is her name? Shelley, yes, thank you. Her Operation Grad 109 Graduation Dropout Prevention Initiative, I thought was a terrific idea. I'm looking forward to seeing what impact it has. I just want to see, I think I'll leave the other comments I have for tonight so other people have an opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Mrs. Giovanelli.
For a shorter time, I'll just save it for tonight as well. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Patrica.
So you all know I sent you some documents from the National School Boards Association training that started last Wednesday and ended on Saturday, and I have a whole lot more documents to send you. I've composed the email, but there's so many attachments that the email won't go through. Anyways, one of the most enlightening things for me was the mix and mingles. We were placed into Zoom chat rooms with school board members from the various regions across the country. I was obviously in the southern region. And we are, of all the people in that room, we are one of 2 states that has been open since the beginning of the school year to all students 5 days a week. And it struck me yet again that the unbelievable task that Dr. Atkins and his team have been able to accomplish in this school year. I mean, you know, one day the question was, what are the struggles that you are facing? And people were saying things like, we don't know how to reopen our schools. And I'm thinking, we don't know how to help parents understand that the pandemic task force is recommending that we keep the masks on. You know what I mean? Like I get that families are upset, and I get that staff is at the end of their rope, but our problems are so different compared to other places in the country that haven't even been able to figure out how to get their kids back in buildings. I mean, there are a lot of states that their high school kids are not in school at all. And for us to be able to accomplish what we've accomplished here, and I cannot stress enough, Dr. Atkins is considered a pandemic leader in the state of Florida, and that makes him a leader across the nation because too many states have been unable to do what we have been able to do. And I know he's going to say it's all about the team, but you know, it starts at the top. And it hit me so hard that our biggest struggle right now is how to build new buildings fast enough to accommodate the growth, whereas their struggle is how do I get kids back in schools. It was such a contrast for me. My school visits are continuing. I mentioned earlier I've been out to Lambs. Dr. Gibson, in my estimation, has created a very dynamic environment out there. I happened to be there on the day that they have fellowship. They call it something, I don't know what it is, for staff, and each department is assigned with putting out breakfast, basically, for the day. And the mood in the room was very light and very fun and very inviting, and just you could tell people enjoyed being in that room with each other. And that's an important part of a culture at a school, I think. I've been out to Estero for a visit as well, Estero High School, and I'm out there all the time, and you know how much I love out there. I would like to ask Attorney Dupree-Bruno and or Dr. Adkins for the April 27th briefing on the Student Code of Conduct. Could you bring forward information about whether the NCAA's policy impacts us, provides an extra layer of legal requirement on us? I don't think it does, but if you could just offer an opinion on that. Also, if you could give us an updated, I don't mean to the minute, but a more updated version of where the various pieces of state legislation that are working their way through the legislature right now, where they stand. And what I mean by that is, we got a brief from staff, we got a brief list of some of the pending bills, but they really were just the pending bills that support what the district is already doing. There are a whole bunch of bills out there that would completely eliminate what the district has done up to this point. So please don't just tell me what the bills are, tell me where they are in the process. Is there a bill in both houses? Is it just in one chamber? Has it been through any committees? If so, has it been approved? Where it is in the process so that we can get a feel for whether it's likely to pass or not, and that can be part of our conversation. Is that cool? I'm almost done. I'd like us to revisit the issue of videotaping meetings. If we could all email somebody and tell them what our various committees said, and then some staff member can gather that for us, and then we can come together, because we have been asked to re-examine this, and re-examination, in my opinion, requires a conversation. So, Dr. Atkins, to whom should we send those emails for gathering of information, please?
My initial thought would be Cindy McClung.
Okay, great. So if we could all email Cindy McClung, please, and let them know what your various committees said about videotaping. Oh, I thought you were doing something. I already talked to you about DAC. The Estero meeting feedback. Is Ms. Eba still here? No. The feedback that I got about her was just outstanding, just completely outstanding. And I've spoken to Dr. Atkins about this. There are people who live in that community who, no matter what, are not going to want the school located there, but they walked away with a much deeper understanding of the process that the district has already gone through. And I mean, Kathy, Ms. Eba was the star of the night. There's no doubt about it. I think that there was a perception in the community that the district woke up one day and decided to drop a school on that site, and all notions of that were completely dispelled by Ms. Eba's presence and her presentation that night. And I did mention to Dr. Atkins the possibility of, for these various large construction or renovation projects, creating a separate page on the website for those, so that we can really direct community members to that specific place for the sharing of information. And my final comment is really a question. I understand the half-penny sales tax signage. I was one of the people who pushed really hard for it. I'm really happy we're doing it. But I'm wondering, as we hire construction managers on $70 million projects, why aren't they including signs in that $70 million project, right? Like, they can put their branding on it, they can put our branding on it, and they can be a nice big sign at a construction site as opposed to the little sign, the smaller signs that we have for HVAC updates or whatever. So that's just, I don't even know if we can do that, but on $70 million, that sign can't be too expensive, right? Those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Okay. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, thank you. I'll save mine for this evening, considering the time.
Okay. Ms. Jordan?
I will do the same.
Mrs. Gittens?
Okay, I just have a couple of things, and the rest will be this evening. I wanted to put to rest, I understand there was a bit of angst about the fact that I spoke at the Black Expo at Edison Mall, and concern, basically, I guess, about what I was going to say. I had someone to tape it on Facebook Live, so in case you're interested in what I talked about, it was done live on Facebook. And Mr. Malloy was there with me, and he can confirm that I used the impact study, and we passed them out to everyone in the audience, and I gave an overview and then asked questions and allowed people to look through the impact study. And using the same words, it was very impactful to get people to actually see some of the things that we're doing. I'm sorry?
I was just,
What is the impact study?
yeah, what was the impact study?
Talking about.
Multi-fold handout.
You know, that multi.
Everybody
thing
has
we put out
boxes
with
of them
district
in your
facts.
office.
No, thank you. We're just trying to put it in our head.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's this.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay? So we handed this out to people in the audience, and then I had a series of questions after I spoke. And if they got the question right, then they got candy or something like that. And afterwards, I got a lot of good feedback that people didn't even know what it was and weren't aware of some of the things that we do in the district, and that is what I cover. I'm sorry, yes.
And I'm sorry, may I ask, what was it that you spoke at?
It was the Black Expo at, for Black businesses at Edison Mall. And I had been asked a month or so ago about participating. And the superintendent was going to go, and he had I guess, a previous engagement. So I did the Sunday.
Thank you.
And there were various speakers, and there were tables all over the mall with different Black businesses and that type of thing. So I just want to let you know that. Schools I visited, LAMP, and this is where I hated COVID because I wanted to pick up a baby so bad. James Stevens, and I went to the Early Center as well. And I do have some issues there. I have asked several times about the fencing around James Stevens, and I was told that it was all fine and it was all 6 feet, and there is a section that is not, and I will send that to the superintendent and copy all of you as well. And there is an area that does create some issues for them because it is a very low fence. I have pictures that I'll share. And it's an unused area of ground that could be used for a garden or a seating area or something for the students. And I spoke with the principal and the maintenance person about it, so you'll be getting more information about that. Let's see. I think that's all. I'll do the rest this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I'm just going to highlight last night's EDAC meeting. We had an excellent presentation on social emotional learning and mental health. It was Lori Brooks and Mary Lynn Rodriguez that presented. And then because LGBTQ has been an ongoing concern on the EDAC committee, did mention the information that we received yesterday, and a few of the people on the committee had seen the information, the misinformation about our unisex bathrooms that don't really exist, and I guess we're going to be talking more about that later, but it sparked some discussion as well, and Mr. Eady also added to that conversation. So as I think I mentioned earlier when we had the EDAC, when Mr. Quisenberry was here for the EDAC report, it's a lovely committee because it always, and I saw you nodding before, there's always a lot of discussion, a lot to say, and I'll talk about my school visits this evening. So, Attorney Dupree Bruno, do you have any
Three
comments?
very quick things. Ms. Giddens, thank you for the article about shall, will, must, and all that good stuff. Based on the article, I would make a recommendation to the board that we replace the shalls with the must, given that that appears to be the safest word to use when you want to say legally mandatory. So may I have a consensus to change the shall to must in 9.10?
I would like an opportunity to look at it again if we can.
I'm just going to replace the shalls to the must based on this article, which I think.
And it's not final until we look at it all. This is
Right, it will go to the second reading.
Okay.
Okay, 7 thumbs up, unanimous.
The other thing is, Ms. Morgan, I did look at the statute with regards to 5.081, and it should be area, so we're going to make that correction. And then the last thing, Ms. Patrica, if you can clarify for me, because I understood you to say for the April 27th briefing with regard to the Code of Conduct, you wanted us to provide any updates that would relate to that?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So just that area?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
To include the Parents' Bill of Rights and where that is and all.
I kind of thought that's what you were talking about specifically. Okay, thank you very much.
My understanding that there's a bunch of legislation out there, and we were given a snapshot of it. I'd like a bigger.
With regards to the Code of Conduct in that poster, basically.
With regard to LGBT issues and how they impact K-12 education.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Can I clarify one thing? I did speak to someone in Tallahassee about the Parents' Bill of Rights bill, and that it's not that they're changing anything. They are taking all of the, like the HIPAA and this and that, and putting it all together in one Parents' Bill of Rights bill, as opposed to this section and this section over here.
Well, and what goes in may not come out that way. We may have a long train, or who knows, but I'm sure by the 27th, it'll be a lot more clear cut. And Dr. Atkins, comments?
I'll be brief. Just as you know, we have a lot of interest relative to this evening's meeting, so just anticipating that first of all, we have extra security. Secondly, we are trying to prepare some extra space, utilizing our lobby and our overflow areas as well, just to try to provide, video and those type of things. Just understand that the social distancing that we've been able to enjoy in the past, that may or may not happen tonight in the audience here. We're not going to try to enforce social distancing. We would obviously encourage it, but no idea what that crowd is going to look like. And if some of you have been around to our schools, you understand that many of our classrooms now are less than the six feet. So just wanted you to be aware and prepared for that. That's why they've done some things to try to mitigate that. Taking the tape off. As you can see, we did have tape out there in the auditorium. They've taken that off, put up some different, ropes and like, but all that trying to just, again, anticipate and be accommodating to those that want to be a part of the meeting this evening. And that's all the comments I have today. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody forget anything? I think we probably all need a good dinner. And seeing nothing more, this meeting is adjourned. See you at 6 o'clock.